Annie. Ready.
Good evening. I call the June 7th, 2021 meeting of the Pickens County Council to order. Tonight I want to thank everyone for being here with us as we do the business of the county, and I do ask that everyone stay respectful and civil as we make our way through this long agenda tonight. It's good to see such a great turnout. It's always good to hear feedback from the communities in which we serve. Tonight I'm going to ask Councilman Inslee Feimster to lead us in the invocation. Following the invocation, I'm going to ask the Hendricks brothers of Pickens to lead us in the pledge. And before we get started, I want to give the bios for the Hendricks brothers. Floyd Webster Hendricks, United States Marine Corps, 31st of July 1969 to the 31st of July 1999. Floyd Webster Hendricks entered the United States Marine Corps on the 31st day of July at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and was then sent to Parris Island, South Carolina for basic training, and then on to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina for advanced training, and then on to Camp Pendleton, California. Floyd Hendricks was then deployed to Quang Tri with duties in various regions of South Vietnam. Other service locations included Quonset Point, Rhode Island, Fort Huachka, Arizona, Parris Island, South Carolina, and Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Sergeant Hendricks continuously served his country as an intelligence chief, drill instructor, infantry unit leader for 30 years, and retired the 31st of July, 1999 as Master Gunnery Sergeant. Master Gunnery Sergeant Floyd Hendricks received awards for many of his achievements and service in the United States Marine Corps. His awards are the Good Conduct Medal with 9 stars, Rifle Expert Badge, Pistol Sharpshooter Badge, Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal with 1 star, Sea Service Deployment Ribbon with 2 stars, Letter of Appreciation 3, Marine Unit Citation, Drill Instructor Ribbon, National Defense Service Medal, Combat Action Ribbon, Vietnam Service Medal, Republic of Vietnam Campaign Medal, Republic of Vietnam Meritorious Unit Citation, Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal, Navy Commendation Medal, Meritorious Unit Commendation, Meritorious Service Medal. Veteran Floyd Webster Hendricks served his country honorably for 30 years, and today we show him our appreciation. Thank you for your service. Second, we have Alfred Lee Hendricks, United States Navy, the 18th of November of 68 to the 17th of November of 74. Alfred Lee Hendricks entered the United States Navy on the 18th of November and completed basic training in Orlando, Florida. Alfred Hendricks then went to pre-commissioning school in San Diego, California. Alfred Hendricks and approximately 500 other sailors were sent to Bremerton, Washington, prepared to go to the new ship USS Seattle A03. Approximately 8 months later, we finally went aboard the ship. After an additional 8 months of taking the ship out and back into shore, we departed the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard and started the journey to Norfolk, the home port. Stops along the way included San Diego, California for equipment, Acapulco, Mexico, through the Panama Canal, and New Orleans, Florida, and into home port. Several months later, headed to Cuba for special warfare training. Seaman Hendricks received the National Defense Service Medal and Navy Service Ribbon. Veteran Alfred Lee Hendricks served his country honorably for 6 years, and today we show him appreciation. Thank you for your service. Donnie Hendricks, United States Army, August of 1974 to August of 1980. Donnie Hendricks entered the United States Army at Fort Jackson, South Carolina for basic training, and then on to Fort Riley, Kansas. He then did a tour of duty in Wiesbaden, Germany, and then to Fort Ord, California. Sergeant Donnie Hendricks received awards for his many achievements in service in the United States Army. His awards are the Good Conduct Medal, graduate of French Commando School, and distinguished graduate of the Non-Commissioned Officers Academy. Veteran Donnie Hendricks served his country honorably for 6 years, and today we show him our appreciation. Thank you for your service. Michael Hendricks, United States Army, 1982 to 1990. Michael Hendricks graduated Pickens High School and received a football scholarship to Clemson University in 1978. In 1982, he joined the United States Army. Most of his military years were spent at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Sergeant Michael Hendricks received the Good Conduct Medal and Armed Service Ribbon. Sergeant Michael Hendricks returned to college after his military service and completed a Bachelor's of Science in Healthcare Administration. In 2003, he opened a family physician medical practice in Rayford, North Carolina. Veteran Michael Hendricks served his country honorably for 8 years, and today we show him our appreciation. Thank you for your service. Gregory Todd Hendricks, United States Army, July 1985 to October of 2012. Gregory Todd Hendricks entered the United States Army in July 1985 at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Tours of duty included the East Coast, Southeast Asia, Fort Benning, Georgia, Europe, Germany, and the Middle East. Sergeant Gregory Hendricks received awards for his many achievements in service in the United States Army. His awards are the Bronze Star, Meritorious Service Medal with 2 oak leaves, the Good Conduct Medal and the Army Service Ribbon, and the National Defense Service Medal, as well as the Combat Action Badge for duties in Iraq. Veteran Gregory Todd Hendricks served his country honorably for 27 years, and today we show him our appreciation. Thank you for your service. Charles Fletcher Hendricks, United States Marine Corps, 26th November of 69 to the 30th November 1991. Charles Fletcher Hendricks entered the United States Marine Corps on the 26th of November at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and was then sent to Parris Island for basic training, and then on to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina for advanced training as a combat engineer and duties at Cherry Point, North Carolina. Charles F. Hendricks was then deployed to Camp Pendleton, California, Okinawa, Japan, South Korea, Hawaii, Guam, Philippines, Hong Kong, the European Theater, Quantico, Virginia, and retiring in Naples, Italy. Gunnery Sergeant Charles F. Hendricks received awards for his many achievements in service in the United States Marine Corps. His awards are the Good Conduct Medal, National Defense Medal, and the Marine Corps Service Ribbon. Veteran Charles Fletcher Hendricks served his country honorably for 22 years, and today we show him our appreciation. Thank you for your service. At this time, I'm going to ask Councilman Inslee Fingster to lead us in invocation, and then I'm going to ask the Hendricks brothers to lead us in the pledge.
Would you join me in prayer? Dear Heavenly Father, we're thankful how you've blessed this country. We're thankful for the organization of this country and how we have the freedoms that we have. We pray for our president who has a big load on his shoulders. We pray for our military who protected us around the world and here at home. We pray for our state officials who work diligently for us. We pray for our law enforcement. We pray that we will honor our law enforcement, and we pray for them in the hazardous work that they do. We also pray for guidance in the decisions that we make tonight. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Will you join us?
If I could have the Hendricks brothers step forward, please.
You guys are going to lead us.
We can get a photo and. Thank you, Joe.
To the flag United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, guys. Gentlemen, before you step down, I would like to give you a little something.
You're number 38.
So I have a small certificate of honor I'd like to share with you tonight. Alfred, thank you for your service to our country. Thank you. Thank you for your service to our country. At the bottom one. Thank you for your service to our country. Thank you for your service to our country. If y'all don't mind, I'd like to get a picture with us behind you, if you don't mind.
Look the other way.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We want to thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
They got like 100 years between them. Incredible.
That's a proud family, I'm going to tell you. There's a proud mama somewhere. Absolutely. At this time in our agenda, it's our time for our public forum. This is a time for the community to share with us what their concerns and their desires are. I want to remind everyone that we do have a 3-minute time limit per participant and a 30-minute total time limit that we will allow for public forum. I know there's a large number with a lot of things that want to be discussed. If there's anything that should be, could be, you amongst yourself work out on lumping together, that is totally fine. If for some reason you are not able to share tonight, and even if you are able to share tonight, and you have some documentation that you would like for the clerk to send out to the entire council, please feel free to see Megan, and she'll be more than happy to do so. At this time, Madam Clerk, please call our first speaker.
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, I call Chris Williams.
Council members, I'd like to share what I believe I and many others perceive as a global threat to our property rights, a growing threat. Without property, we have no liberty. Without property, we have no means to exercise our inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Without property, you and I are, in practice, the property of government. You are a slave of government, a subject, not a citizen. Here are 3 points from the 10-point plan in the Communist Manifesto. Abolition of property in land. Confiscation of property of immigrants and rebels. Number 3, free education for children in public schools. Vladimir Lenin had this to say about private property. Quote, communist morality is that which serves the struggle and unites the working people against all exploitation, against all private property, or against all petty private property. For petty property puts into the hand of one person, that's you and I, that which has been created by the labor of the whole society. Now, what kind of anti-Christian, anti-biblical nonsense is that? For 100 plus years, Marxist socialist ideology has been infiltrating all levels of our culture, from academia, government, entertainment, and notably mass media. There are 1.5 million NGOs in the United States. The U.S. has no laws prohibiting foreign funding. The United Nations is the biggest criminal, Marxist, socialist cartel on the face of the planet. The Upstate NGO, 10 at the top, has dozens of private, corporate, and university partners. Their goals on cursory examination appear laudable. However, the biggest red flag I see at this point is sustainability. Sustainability. This is with virtually no doubt, I said virtually, no doubt, connected to environmental goals, which in turn will connect at some level with the so-called man-made global climate change threat. The UN uses this contrived threat to coerce cooperation. I do not know if 10 at the top receives federal or UN dollars. One would be as bad as the other. You, the Pickens County Council, have a sacred responsibility to be a firewall of protection between our property rights and an already strongly socialist, Marxist federal government. Our prayers, admonitions, and support will go with you, gentlemen, because you're going to need it. You're going to need wisdom. You're going to need to do some research on your own, and I apologize for not having some sources typed out for you. I'm in a learning process. This is only the third time I've stood before you gentlemen. The first two times, I didn't quite get everything said, but I made it this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tommy Stroud.
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. We are proud at our Dacresville community. We are a God-fearing community, and we are thankful for His many blessings. Grandparents, parents, and pillars of our community have taught us what was right and wrong, good family values and morals, and we are trying to teach our children and grandchildren the same values. Grown-ups are supposed to make good examples, especially the county council, because y'all make our rules and our regulations for the Pickens County. With much concern, I am here to voice my opinion on the serving of alcohol and wine at our community center. Everyone on county council does not live in our Dacresville area. Our community club voted some guidelines consisting of no smoking, no profanity, no alcohol, and others to be allowed at our community center. We have boys clubs, girls clubs, sewing groups, a library, a fitness center, quilts of valor, self-defense classes, and rec facilities for our youth. We do not want our children or grandchildren to come out of these facilities with somebody drinking, using foul language, and blowing smoke in their face. We have had horse shows, July the 4th barbecues, farm days, car shows, Christmas tree lightings, in which 6 and 7 churches participated, Christmas parades, reunion, and family outings without the serving of alcohol. Each a success. If someone cannot stop drinking for 2 or 3 hours, they surely do not need to be in our community, placing our children and family in danger. I hope that's to all communities. We all make bad decisions and choices, and we have to ask for forgiveness. But please, I'm coming to you. Please keep our community values and our families and our children safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maggie Erickson.
Councilman, I appreciate the opportunity to address you today. I live in Central South Carolina, 2 houses south of Daniel High School. And I'm here to address the council about a nuisance property with chronic code violations at 1781 6 Mile Highway, which is adjacent to our property, other residences, and directly adjacent to Daniel High School. In September 2017, my husband and I moved into my childhood home, which my family has owned since 1974. The property adjacent to our north began deteriorating rapidly, including a large buildup of junk, over 30 cars, boats, RVs, appliances, and garbage scattered throughout the property. I searched Pickens County Code of Ordinances and realized there were numerous violations. Not long after, we and our neighbors, who were also concerned, began contacting code enforcement. On February 5th, 2020, I contacted Councilman Whitehurst with concerns with ongoing code violations. We had been in regular contact with code enforcement, but weren't seeing much progress. One day after speaking with Mr. Whitehurst, the code enforcement officer was out reviewing the property and then citing the resident with violations. According to the officer in public record, the resident is currently in queue for 3 jury trials related to code violations, and at his last appearance before the magistrate in 2020, he was ordered to build a fence along our property line. It has been over a year, and though the resident began building the fence, it isn't completed, and it's partially constructed with junk, including a 3-foot-tall swimming pool liner, and it encroaches on our property in 2 locations. If the resident was ordered to build a fence because of the junk on his property, we also request that the council review the codes which prohibit a junkyard within 1,000 feet of a public school. This property should be cleaned up and should not be allowed to operate as a non-licensed or licensed junkyard, fence, or no fence. But this isn't just about a fence. This resident is a chronic violator of the codes of Pickens County and the magistrate's orders. We're addressing this in a public forum because this property is a hazard to the surrounding residents, to Daniel High School, and to the residents. According to the penalties cited for noncompliance in the Pickens County Code, quote, "The violation of any such provision of this code or any such ordinance shall be subject to a fine not exceeding $500 or imprisonment not exceeding 30 days, or both such fine and imprisonment. Each day a violation of this code or any such ordinance, resolution, rule, regulation, or order shall constitute, except where otherwise provided, a separate offense." I believe that only the full enforcement of the steepest penalty will get this resident's attention. Citations and appearing before the magistrate have not brought him into compliance. We're asking for follow-up inspections and for the steepest penalties for noncompliance to be implemented. When Councilman Whitehurst and I spoke on the phone January of 2020, he said that codes are meant to ensure the peaceful enjoyment of our property as well as to help protect property values. And we are begging you to help us restore our property value and to give us the peaceful restoration of the enjoyment of our property that we have not had since September 2017. Thank you, gentlemen, for your service to our county.
Evelyn Gaddis. Brad Erickson.
My name is Brad Erickson, and I live at 1773 6 Mile Highway, which is right next to the property that Maggie had talked about, and that property is, again, adjacent to Daniel High School. And I'm going to express my concern about the condition of the property at next door, which address is 1781, and particularly the dwellings. I've been in the main house over there, the brick residence, and I've also been in a tiny little cobbled together house that's been built right next to that. In the main house, the resident has ripped out all the ductwork and copper piping a year ago. The deck is falling off the back. There's a window in the upper level that's been missing for a couple years and has been uncovered the whole time. We believe that there are people living in RVs on the property, but really don't know what kind of access they had to sanitation and things like that. And the tiny house next door, I don't know if that was permitted or expected when it was built. And I know that there's one fellow that lives in that tiny house next door. What we're asking is that an inspection be made of the structures on the property so that it complies with health and safety codes as outlined in Article 2, Housing and Abatement. Now, regarding the fence that was mentioned, I've on a couple occasions talked to the homeowner and tried to offer my assistance and my counsel on the fence, but the fence remains unfinished and he doesn't seem willing to comply with us. So I'm asking the council that, to direct a coordinated effort between code enforcement, the magistrate, and the solicitor, if necessary, and anyone else who may have authority to act in regard to these chronic code violations and unsafe conditions at 1781 6 Mile Highway. So again, please help us to restore health and safety and the peaceful enjoyment of our property because it's been difficult to live right next to this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Dale Holloway.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and County Councilman. I'm here to read a letter provided by Tom Turner addressing concerns shared by him and members of the Dacusville community of an upcoming event. I, Tom Turner, live on Earls Bridge Road in Dacusville community with my wife, Jackie, of 40 years. Together with the community volunteers, we host the Dacusville Farm Show every year. Thus far, we have held 8 farm shows, alcohol-free, with visitors from all over the state and other states. I come tonight seeking some answers concerning the art show that is to be held at the Dacusville Community Center. It is my understanding that alcohol will be sold at this event. I am absolutely against the sale of alcohol at the event and any other event held at the community center. Here are my questions. Number 1, what kind of alcohol is to be sold? Beer, wine, hard liquor, mixed drinks, etc. Number 2, it's my understanding that 3 readings are usually made before the granting permission of this kind of permit, and did this happen? Number 3, I have brought photos and signed or of a sign outside of the community center which explicitly states there is to be no alcohol used or consumed on the premises. Number 4, the bylaws of the Dacusville Community Center states that there will be no consumption of alcohol at the community center. Number 5, who is paying for the liability insurance for the sale of alcohol? Who will be liable if someone is seriously hurt or killed if an alcohol is traced back to the event? Will the county be responsible? Do taxes pay for the insurance or pay if someone is hurt or killed? Number 6, who is licensed to serve and sell the alcohol? Number 7, will servers be trained to determine if someone has had too much alcohol? Who is in charge to set a cutoff limit and determines when someone cannot drive due to intoxication? Will there be additional law enforcement to make sure that no one is driving under the influence? Number 9, if the policy going forward is to allow the use of alcohol on county property, could there at least be notices posted online elsewhere for input for the community, possibly to have some input of decisions? And number 10, lastly, on arrest.org, there have been 84 DUI-related charges in this county since the first of the year. Are you willing for there to be more as a result from alcohol being sold on county property?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our over 325 members of Conservatives of the Upstate have 4 concerns tonight. First, none of you have replied to my emails if you are in favor or against signing our resolution we presented to you all affirming you will protect our property rights in the comprehensive plan. We are close to 300 petition signatures from citizens who want you to adopt this resolution, and we are still collecting through the end of this month. Second, our group is upset that the alcohol sales vote on county property was not transparent ahead of time for citizens to know what your behind-the-scenes plans were. No one knew there was going to be a vote on this issue except a few special citizens. Just because you had 2 speakers speaking on behalf of alcohol sales on the night of that vote was not reason enough to go against an already in place policy for decades of no alcohol on county property. It is very concerning that the agenda that was posted to inform people of upcoming votes, that there was no actual verbiage on that agenda saying considering alcohol sales on county property. One has to wonder if this was by design. Was it because you didn't want hordes of people at the meeting opposing this policy? 4 of you voted for it anyway. with little to no input from average citizens. Shame on you. What is the procedure now if citizens want this policy changed back? We'd like to know going forward that on any agenda, the verbiage is transparent, and any votes that are going to take place that are not requiring 3 readings, we the people should be informed. Even the newspaper didn't alert citizens about your upcoming vote on the alcohol issue last month. Third, we would like to know more about the 2 EMS vehicles purchased recently. Are they presently on the road answering calls? If not, why not? Are our EMS ambulance services prepared for growth of calls due to the population increase? We would also like to know the total cost to taxpayers of the new Pickens County logo, including updating the new signage, employee uniforms, and logos on equipment like the EMS vehicles and county vehicles. Fourth, the library situation is indeed troublesome. Sitting on a $3 million nest egg of taxpayer money is outrageous. Indeed, you guys are over collecting our tax money, and we can't understand why the library has a leg to stand on to complain and say you're cutting their funds. Please move forward with your plan to adjust their millage so there won't be over collections of taxes taking place. If there are reserves in any department, those funds should be spent on critical needs, not just wants.
Thank you, Ms. Raines.
Thank you. I have a gift for all of the members that.
Thank you.
And what was the name of it?
I'm
What?
sorry, I didn't catch that name, Madam Clerk.
What's in it?
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me speak tonight, council members. 2 years ago in this room at the council meeting, I presented the issue of heavy trucks using their engine brakes in our community. I am asking once again to please give your attention to this loud, unnecessary noise. Since that meeting, my wife and I were in York, South Carolina, in York County. There were posted signs there, no engine brakes, with a hefty fine. There is a big trucking company right as you enter that town, and the county council solved this problem as I talked to a member. Again, I am asking to please do something about this. If I have to, I will get a petition and cover Highway 8 from 11 right down to the city of Pickens where it is at first gate. I have talked about this with many residents. I'm near Highway 8, and they are on board with this annoyance of this loud noise and the like stuff. As I told you last time, I am not against trucks and truck drivers. They are the wheels that move our commerce and vital for our economy. I've worked in the trucking industry both in management and as an over-the-road driver. I have been behind the wheel of a big rig for over 1 million miles. I am well aware of how this loud noise can and it can't be stopped. Some of these drivers have absolutely no bumpers on their rigs, so in essence, they are running straight pipes right off the exhaust manifold, and we can hear them coming at least a mile away. And when they go by, the noise gets louder as they go by our pole. Drivers use their engine brakes coming to the stoplight at the Pumpkin Town liquor light, a fully flat circle highway gate. There is no need for these brakes to be engaged. It is controlled by a driver in a 3-phase switch mode in the toggle switch on his dashboard. There is not a hill in Pickens County big enough to warrant the use of this system. The trucks that are making this noise are mostly water and chip pumps that travel Highway 8 multiple times a day. Once they come into the city, I have heard them doing the same thing just going down the road by advanced hour. They run this truck, is it Refill Road, and then turn right and head into Keene on Church Road. In closing, before I brought this issue to the council last time, I first contacted the trucking company whose trucks were making this noise. I politely explained the noise on the rural area, and I was treated rudely and hung up on, and since then the noise has gotten worse. Looking for some peace and quiet in our lovely community, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. And last but not least, please do something about the roads at this time. Highway 8 and Highway 135 are driving out of Washington.
Thank you, sir.
Think about infrastructure. This is knowledge infrastructure that needs to be maintained. Yes, the roads are in terrible shape. It's not new. If you have not been in the library in the last couple of years, I encourage you to go. They have bloomed. They have outreach programs to reach teenagers, young people, old people, people who have never used a computer, people who have the need to have assistance with their taxes or information. The door count figure, which I found hilarious when I first heard about it, let's think about the door counts for the restaurants, the hairdressers, the grocery stores, our doctor's offices. They were all down pretty significantly last year, too. That's just a crazy figure to bring up. And I want to bring up this, too, because my husband doesn't go to the library very often. In fact, maybe a half a dozen times a year. But he goes every day on his phone. You know, if you cut funding, you're going to be doing, and you farmers here ought to understand this one very well, you'll be eating your seed corn, and it's not okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Melanie McLean.
Good afternoon, Chairman Bowers, and thank you all, County Council leaders, for your service to our community. My name is Melanie McLean, and I am a lifelong resident of the upstate of South Carolina, growing up in neighboring Oconee County. But I raised my family in Pickens County along with my husband, Noah McLean, of 18 years, and 2 children, Jordan and Carson, both at R.C. Edwards. Vice Chairman Whitehurst, we reside in central South Carolina on a property adjacent to Daniel High School. Recently, the Journal newspaper published an article about an incident that took place at Daniel High parking lot on May 19th. And while the article was not specific about the aggressor in the incident, the article gave the impression and even stated they were confident that the situation was resolved effectively. My purpose for being here today is to notify you that the situation is not resolved and has been an ongoing problem for at least the last 3 years. For 3 years now, myself and other neighbors, like Brad and Maggie Erickson that spoke previously, have been reaching out to code enforcement and law enforcement, notifying them of the conditions and the activity of the residents located at 1781 6 Mile Highway, a property also adjacent to Daniel High School. I am here today asking for your help and support to address 2 specific concerns. The first is effective and efficient enforcement of code violations. As it stands today, there are multiple dwellings on the property, dozens of junk cars, abandoned RVs, as Brad said, people living in them, and other miscellaneous collection of junk. The second concern, which may not be directly within your authority, is the lack of response from law enforcement for calls regarding guns and domestic disturbances. On more than one occasion, we have called the Sheriff's Department with no follow-up or response. In addressing this issue directly with the sheriff, he has committed consistently to a community action team that would be convened with the school board, law enforcement, and code enforcement, but has failed to follow through on this commitment. I appreciate the opportunity to address this council this afternoon, and I thank you for advance your commitment to resolution and your service to the community.
Thank you. There's an ongoing review of ordinances in the county right now that includes what they're talking about, right?
That is correct.
Are
Yes,
you
sir.
guys going to have public
Yeah.
input to that activity?
Once it gets to a point that the code, it's the code enforcement as, in its entirety, not just one specific part, but its entirety. And once it gets gelled together, then certainly bring it before council for your preview and also for comment as well.
Thank you.
Lori Osborne.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Lori Osborne. Let me start by stating that I love the library. When I first moved to Pickens County, I was in awe of the beautiful facility in Easley. However, while there is an extreme value in the libraries, they are not any more important than the other departments that the county is responsible for maintaining: EMS, Sheriff, Public Works, and road crews. That being said, I was amazed when I found out that the library is allowed to keep any monies that they do not use from the previous budget year, while other departments must return that money to the general fund. They are in essence creating a savings account with the taxpayers' dollars. So slowing the growth in the library's fund that continues to grow does not seem unreasonable. As a matter of fact, it's prudent since they are sitting on close to $3 million in their coffers as we speak. The library should not be treated any differently than any other county entity. As a matter of fact, the library also receives funds from the Library Foundation. So if citizens feel the need and willingness, they can always donate money to the Library Foundation and receive a tax deduction at the same time, a win-win scenario for everyone. From attending the council's budget meeting, it was stated that Pickens County is required by the state to have a local commitment of $3.1 million. However, the council voted to bring before the people a local commitment of $3.2 million. The council has a governance rule, and every department should be treated equally. I do believe what the council discussed at the budget meeting is fair, and any monies that are saved through this could be put to use for road improvements, new equipment, and/or personnel for the emergency services and the safety of all Pickens County residents. The roads in Pickens County are very bad. 30% of the roads are considered in poor condition. The county has 660 miles of roads and repaving that is running once every 75 years. This needs to be improved and more funding needs to be found. Lastly, I would like to invite more citizens to come to the various meetings that the council holds. Example, budgeting. This way, they will learn firsthand and not through the media what is exactly going on in their county. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. As we no longer have time for we don't have time for another speaker at 30 minutes. So if there is anyone that has communication to share, please feel free to reach out to Ms. Nations and she'll share that with us. On to item number 3 on the agenda, approval of minutes. You have before you the budget work session on April 27th minutes, April 28th special call meeting at Alliance Pickens minutes, May 3rd council meeting minutes, May 11th budget work session minutes. I'll ask for a motion approving these minutes. Motion by Councilman Whitehurst. Do I have a second?
Second.
Wilson. Second by Councilman Feimster. Any discussion on the minutes?
Yeah, that's right.
Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the minutes as presented, please signify by raising your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 4 on the agenda tonight, the administrator's report. Mr. Roper.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to present here tonight on a few points that I think might be of interest to the council and to the public. The first being our normal COVID-19 update. I think we're hastening, and we're hopefully hastening to a point where this is not the first update I give you as a part of the administrator's report. I know we're down to 126 active cases within Pickens County within the last 14 days. That's still, a number we would not pick if we were given a choice, but you can see that we are making progress. We have had over 35,000 residents have completed their vaccinations, approximately 30% of the eligible population. So we're excited about that. We want to encourage people to please investigate getting their vaccination from their local care provider or from the private care providers such as the grocery stores or the drugstores that are able to administer that. But I also want to let people know about our Pickens County Vaccination Clinic, which has moved locations. It's moved locations to try to serve a different population. The folks at the Sheriff's Office were nice enough to host us for several instances of that vaccination clinic. But we've now moved it to the Pickens County Museum on 307 Johnson Street. You can see that you can go between 7 a.m. and 12 p.m. on Tuesdays and between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. on Thursdays. You can make appointments, but walk-ins are welcome, so we want to encourage people to make use of that. We're looking at perhaps making this clinic also go mobile so we can take it to other places in the county for underserved populations. But we want to let people know that and know that vaccinations are part of what will help us put this behind us, where I don't start this report every month that way. Our Pickens program, I wanted to give you an update on that because that's now just a couple of weeks old that those applications have been available. We've received, and I don't have the list in front of me, but I might can see it here. We've received to date, over the 2 weeks that we've been active, we've received 22 approved applications for over 60 miles of road. According to the applicants, over 300 people are planning on participating. So we're excited about the start of this. It's been very exciting. But to give you a sense of the different types of groups, and hopefully to encourage some of the groups that might be represented here, some of the groups that have already been approved to participate are the Knights of Columbus, Upstate Roller Girl Evolution, an organization I'm not familiar with, but it sounds fascinating, 5 Point Church, Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, Foothills Trails Conservancy, Hilltop Wesleyan, American Legion Post 11, United Christian Ministries, Pickens YMCA, Reserving Our Appalachian Music, the YAMS program, St. Michael's Episcopal Church, Lake Hartwell Country, Behavioral Health Services, Pickens County Rotary Club, Pickens County Humane Society, PAC 3130 Boy Scouts, the Open Praise Fellowship Church, Pickens View Wesleyan Church, Pickens County Historical Society, Boy Scouts of America, Liberty Troop 227, that was my troop, so I was glad to see that. Easley High School Band Boosters and the Upstate Pathfinders. So those groups have already agreed to participate in our program, which again, for those of the public who may not know, will pay your group, your civic group, your church group, your school group, $250 per mile of road that you're able to document that you picked up litter on over the course of the summer, with the aim to be finishing that up by Labor Day. There's an application, it's online on our website. But so we feel like we've had a good launch with that, and we'll continue to promote it. Excited about those folks that have jumped on board already. Monthly update on the capital improvement plan. You know, a couple of months back we talked about how the county makes its capital purchases, and I committed to you all that we would update you on that as we went forward month over month. You can see those places in yellow is where bids have been awarded. Green, the piece of equipment's already been purchased. Yellow, we're in the process of getting it purchased. It's already had a bid awarded in those cases. In some cases, we're waiting on delivery. You'll see only 3 that are in red, and one is the Rocky Bottom Road culvert, the Silver Creek Arch culvert. We've expended all the funds that were budgeted because of emergency culvert replacements. So you'll see that those have been pushed into the next budget year. And then there's also a loader that was scheduled to be purchased with Roads and Bridges funds, but the Roads and Bridges Department is not far enough along in the implementation of its ditching program to justify buying that piece of equipment and then letting it sit. So they've asked to push that on a little bit. Other than that, we've basically completed our capital purchases for the year, and we thank you for approval for those items to help the county government work and serve the citizens more effectively. 3 staff members, including myself, will be traveling down to Columbia tomorrow to present to the South Carolina Association of Counties for their annual awards. Those will be held at SCETV Studio beginning at 9 a.m. You can watch that process on the SCAC website, which you see that information up there. But basically, I wanted to let you the council, know, because in years past, this award ceremony or this awards presentation process takes place at the annual convention. So a lot of you will have the opportunity to view it. But I wanted you to know what we were presenting. For the J. Mitchell Graham Award, the statewide award, we're submitting our collaborative repair program. I'll be presenting that one tomorrow on behalf of our Public Works Department. You'll remember this is the Stonewall Creek culvert that washed out, and it would have left 22 homeowners stranded. It was a process that we engaged in and tried to collaborate with the Homeowners Association, with the local churches, with Tri-County Tech, with the fire department. We even had Oconee County standing on it as a backup in case our guys all came down with COVID, so that we would be able to get this thing processed. And you'll remember we estimate we saved the taxpayers about $100,000 for doing that in-house. So that'll be one of our presentations. The Barrett-Larimore Regional Cooperation Award. This is where you try to show that your county has been forward-thinking in the way that it's cooperated with others. We've entered our broadband initiative in that entry. As many of you know, we just had the groundbreaking where broadband is going into, before the end of the year, over 30% of the underserved homes in Pickens County are going to be solved by the end of this year. And it's in large part due to this council being proactive with the broadband initiative. So it's a partnership with the School District of Pickens County and Blue Ridge Electric Cooperative and West Telecom And so we're entering that one in the Regional Cooperation Award entry. And then for our COVID showcase, we are entering what we did in response to the surge that we had here at the first of the year, including our temporary information pod that was placed outside so that people had the option of doing business through a drive-through window and didn't have to actually come in the building. So we're going to present those tomorrow. We won't hear who the winners of those entries are until the annual convention, which will come up obviously the end of July, 1st of August. But I wanted you to know that. I know there might be some questions from public forum. One thing I would point out is that several people talked about the issue next to Daniel High School. And our code enforcement has been out there in multiple instances. I think Councilman Whitehurst was instrumental in getting us notified that that problem existed and getting our code enforcement folks to go out there. We are pending jury trials on a couple of those charges, and I was aware of that as well. Also, this is a problem, and Councilman Wilson is correct in pointing out, that doesn't just apply to the code enforcement situation. It also applies to things like animal enforcement, where our process, we're reviewing our process from top down, and the county attorney's engaged in that, our staff's engaged in that, the sheriff's office has participated in that, as well as our fire departments, to try to come up with a more streamlined code enforcement process. So I thank the citizens that came here tonight to speak to that, because it's a need we've also identified, and we'll make sure to reach out to you and see that we get your thoughts on that as well. I don't know if there are any other questions that council has at this time.
Just as a follow-up, you mentioned animals. I know that we've met with the sheriff, and that was part of the process, because that is something that we talked about in that committee meeting, was making sure that our ordinance was in line and enforceable, and it is in that process as well. That's what you understood, correct?
Yes, we're also reviewing that process as well. I can tell you, I'm glad you brought that up, because I neglected to mention, we did meet with the sheriff about that and the chief deputy. A couple of you were present for that conversation as well, to show your interest and support of the community concerns. Sheriff indicated that they're open to changes. They don't have any operational issues with the way the ordinance works, but they certainly understand that the council sets the community standards there. They did point to over 600 violations that they've issued since they started doing animal enforcement a couple years back. And so, of course, some of those have to work their way through the court process still. And gentlemen, if you'll give me a moment to go a step further, based on a lot of this information, I decided it was time for a checkup of our own animal shelter. If you've been following any of the media reports, the Oconee County Animal Shelter, which is operated a little differently than ours. It's under the purview of the sheriff there, their animal shelter is. But they've received some very negative press because of some expose that's been done by Dr. Kim Sanders at Anderson County Paws. Dr. Kim Sanders was very instrumental in the setup of our facility. We brought her in early on because we recognized her expertise. So in Pickens County, she helped design our system. Well, I asked her to do a surprise drop-by to our facility to see how we were doing. And she's issued a written report, which she sent over to me this afternoon, that I'm going to forward on to y'all, and we'll be glad to make public. Very complimentary of what we're doing. Obviously, there's always ways to improve, but very complimentary to the save rate at the Pickens County Animal Shelter, and recognizing the importance of our cooperative attitudes, continuing with our rescues, with our adoption partners, and with our folks out in the community that are going to help us with a big part of this, which is low-cost spay and neuter. So I wanted to let you know we've done that just as a checkup on our own program at the animal shelter.
Thank you. Councilman Waters.
Yeah, this situation going on at Daniel, this has been ongoing, and my concern is that we can issue citation on top of citation on top of citation. Is that coming from us, or is that coming from the sheriff's department?
Some of them are our citations. I can't speak to what the sheriff's office may have cited there, because I just don't know.
But what is our authority there?
But our authority would be on setback line encroachments, life safety issues, whether or not it qualifies as a junkyard, those sorts of things. And we've had our code enforcement folks go out there. I made a note tonight because one of the speakers referenced unsafe living conditions. I want to make sure that we followed up on that aspect of it thoroughly.
Well, my frustration is that this has been a long-standing problem, and that, they're supposed to build a fence, but yet they haven't. But is it our responsibility to go make sure that's being done? And if it's not being done, what are our reactions to that?
Now, I think that was part of the citation. I'll make sure we do a follow-up if we have not already done. I've seen the fence they built, and I mean, I don't want to add fuel to the fire, but I'm not crazy about the fence myself. But that being said, the idea there is to separate the junk from them. But right now, my biggest concern is the life safety issues. Those other things they've been cited on, and as we've mentioned, we're trying to look at our codes as a whole to come up with a more streamlined process.
If, in fact, our code says they cannot have a junkyard within 1,000 feet, is that part of our code?
I don't know that specific language is in our code. I did hear that cited, but I can't.
Can we investigate that to find out?
Absolutely.
It just feels like this seems to be a reoccurring situation, not just in this situation, but this is not the first time we've run across this and had the same situation keep coming back up. And I don't know if it's enforcement or if it's the ordinance. But I'm getting tired of hearing it.
I understand.
Not from you, but the point is that it's a problem that's not being fixed. And I don't know if it's something we need to put in, get you to take a look at, or we need to put into committee, or what we need to do, but
I think it's in committee, and you all are waiting us to bring the results of our review back, because you're exactly right. This has been a chronic problem that's happened over time with a lot of our code enforcement. I know it's not because our staff is not being diligent. They are being diligent, but I know they get frustrated when they go, they encourage, they try to gently coerce compliance, and then ultimately they write a ticket, and the ticket sits in court for a while. So I know that's a frustration.
One last question. Highway 8 and Highway 135.
Right.
Are those county roads?
They are not county roads. I heard the citizen make that comment, and we laughed up here, which I apologize for.
What is our jurisdiction on those roads?
Those are state highways, so we have no jurisdiction over those two roads.
Can we fix those roads?
We cannot.
Okay.
Actually, DOT would love for us to fix those roads, but they would blow our annual budget.
So they'll give them to us. I guarantee they would give them to us.
Can we give up, I don't know if this is appropriate or not. I know there's a lot of questions out here about this alcohol sales. Is there a way to do an overview?
I can give you a little bit of background on that in terms of that applicant.
And how we're addressing this and how we're doing this, so we all clearly.
Yeah, so keep in mind that.
Process, please.
Yes, so keep in mind that these alcohol authorized events are permitted one-time events. These are not blanket events where, I'll just use the worst example I can think of. Hey Good Meal is just a beer fest every Saturday. That would change the nature of the very thing this county is, and the very thing that Hey Good Meal stands for. What is instead allowed under the new policy is a temporary, not frequent private events where a private entity is holding an event in a property that's owned by the county, and they carry the liability insurance. They are responsible in the application for getting licensing through the Department of Revenue in Columbia, and they are responsible for making sure the sheriff has good contact in case there's a problem on the facility. So it's intended for things like wedding receptions, things like that would be a small event. This event in Dacusville is a 3-day event. There's 2 or 3 hours each night of the event where if you have a ticket, if you purchased a ticket, you can go into the portion where there's alcohol being served, and they're using it as a fundraiser. So that's the idea behind that event. But we do have pretty strenuous guidelines in our permitting process. The Dacusville event is the only one that's been through it yet.
Okay. Thank you.
And oh yeah, that's a good question. Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. Just for clarity for the public, it is only for beer and wine. No other type of alcohol is allowed to be served.
Any other questions for Mr. Roper from council?
Thank you, gentlemen.
I just one question. I was reading in the capital budget that we're going to spend about $4.5 million on the airport that we spent for upgrade. Just tell me a little bit about that. How is it being paid for?
So the airport cross-field development, our airport has been a huge success story in the county, and it's grown over time. A lot of the improvements in the airport have been paid for not by county funds, not by in large share state funds, but by federal dollars. So whenever we have a project that's approved at our airport, we make sure that it goes through the process to see if it's eligible for federal reimbursement. That federal reimbursement comes at 90%. So if we spend $10, $9 comes back to us from the feds. The state aviation authority then reimburses us at 5%. So if we spend that same $10, $9 comes back from the feds and 50 cents comes back from the state, which every little bit helps, don't get me wrong. But that's allowed us to build up the terminal out there, to build the hangars, which are full with a waiting list now. The next step for us, Mr. Seda, is to build crossfield, to expand the airport across to the other side of the runway. We have a foothold over there because through some federal funds, which this council approved, we were able to buy a piece of property over there with an existing building on it that has now been contracted away to have a air transport medical helicopter based full-time in that facility. So that's going to be kind of the leverage that gets us our toehold across the road. To answer your question, that 4.5 that's in the capital plan, we won't move forward with the massive grading, the paving, all of that until we have a commitment from the federal government that they're going to reimburse 90% of that. So that's the way that works.
So I'd like to see that, if you can arrange that on.
Sure.
Make a trip there, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Rowe?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Hearing none, item 5 on tonight's agenda is committee report. The Committee of the Whole met on May 17, 2021. Log number 173, results of employee survey, no action taken by the committee. Log number 174, overriding Parks and Rec plan, no action taken by the committee. Log number 176, ordinance 533, first reading in title only to amend animal control, no action was taken by the committee. Log number 175, council rules, council communication, no action taken by the committee. And that was the end of the report for the Committee of the Whole. On April 27, 2021 and May 18, 2021, Solid Waste Ad Hoc Committee met. On the May 18, 2021 meeting, Councilman Whitehurst made a motion to recommend purchasing the shredder out of reserve money and recommended to start putting plastics into the regular MSW temporarily for economic reasons. Motion was seconded by Councilman Henry Wilson and carried 3-0. That comes as a recommendation out of committee tonight, so it does not need a motion. It does not need a second. Any discussion on that?
I'd just like to remind everybody, we started a smaller group to kind of take a look at solid waste because there are just so many details associated with it. And what we sort of agreed to do was some short-term triage issues because folks have had such a difficult time.
Oh, your battery's dead.
No, you're muted. Just hit the top button. Just barely hit it.
How about that?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so we took a look at the opportunity to do some short-term things to triage the situation and, get people through quicker, give them some, opportunity to dump closer to their homes, et cetera. We talked about doing some midterm things where we might do some capital purchases that have short-term impact on some of the issues we've had, but also would have carryover into some of the longer-term things we might need to do with regards to, the landfill, maybe keeping our landfill open, building a new landfill, et cetera. So if you remember last time we came in, we talked about some trucks and trailers in the sorting area. And so this most recent discussion, Mac and Ken brought in some scheduling that kind of showed sort of the layover of all the activities going forward and some of the proposals they had and kind of the timeline and costs associated with different options that we have. And through the discussion, we came down to these two items as something we have enough information about right now to make the proposal. The idea on the shredder is that, if you shred things and take up extra space, that basically the volume associated with things can be cut down if you shred it. And there's opportunity on the long range for the shredder to help us with different types of waste or with actually keeping the volume down long term. And even if we go with another landfill, if we keep our landfill open, et cetera. And then on the plastics, due to economic situations, like for example, China has outlawed the importing of scrap plastics from other countries. The economics that we've all experienced recently with COVID have decreased the usage and so decreased the demand for recyclables. So right now, if we pay someone, if we go to someone to take the waste that folks spend the time and effort to recycle, the actual long-term impact of that is most likely will be increasing our costs, and that material will end up in a landfill somewhere else. So the problem that we have is more of a long-term option, where right now there's basically 7 different types of plastics that we would collect. We collect them up in mixed use, there's really not a demand for that. Two of the types of plastics that are the most easily recycled, there is a demand for it, and so what Ken has talked about doing is sort of a multi-point process for it. Be able to collect and separate it, isolate it, transport it in a way that's cost-effective, and then work with the folks who would actually buy that plastics, and then educate the public on what those plastics look like and how to recycle those, because there is an economic opportunity associated with that. But the other, 5 different types of plastics that don't have a market, that don't have the ability to be easily recycled in a way that makes economic sense for us. In other words, we don't pay more just for somebody else to throw it into a dumpster. Those plastics will be isolated now until hopefully the economy kicks back off with regards to the demand. Maybe someone else in the world will start to accept recycled waste. Maybe the United States infrastructure associated with it may improve. That's a long-term putt. So what we are recommending here is a short-term element with regards to the plastic waste. It's not a politically palatable solution or option for any of us, because recycling certainly typically it would have a financial benefit, and i.e. an economic benefit and an environmental benefit to folks. And then there's been so much effort put in to get the habit of recycling. But at this time, it's just not economically viable for us to, again, pay more so that somebody else ultimately puts something in the dumpster.
I think one of the biggest things that influences on this.
We need a 12-year-old to help us operate this stuff.
I know my battery is dead.
Here, take it.
One of the things that really influenced us on this is it cost us $70 a ton to transport the plastic from the recycling center to the main landfill, because you're transporting so much air. You think about that. When we do our compactor, it's $6 a ton. Now, if we can make $5 a ton on the plastic, we spend $65 just getting it to the recycling center. So we're losing $65 right off the bat before we even handle it. But when we can compact it, then it drops down to that small number to do that. And that was kind of where we are with it, where it's something that you'd love to do. You're shipping a bundle of air, and it's just not cost effective at all at this time to do it, because the recuperating cost, just to move the stuff, is so expensive because it's 98% air. So I hope that addresses some of your concerns with it. And that's kind of how we came up with it. You had a point.
Conversation with the chairman, I guess a couple of weeks back, where we discussed kind of all of this, the ins and outs of this, because the chairman didn't have the benefit of hearing a lot of the background in the meeting. And so we had a good, healthy discussion between myself and the chairman, and he was asking if there was anything we could do. So I just want to ask, if it suits the council as a part of this recommendation, is if we continue trying pilot programs, little things that we can do with the ones and the twos. And ladies and gentlemen, just to continue the education, all plastic's not the same. If it's got threads on the top, it's probably a good recyclable product. And so we're going to try to continue, if it suits council, to look at pilot programs, public education, things where perhaps we can let people know that distinction, and the rest of the stuff's just got to go in the compactor. There's really no other way to deal with it. But we'll come back to you with our proposals for this other stuff. I just wanted you all to know that we're going to continue trying, because I know the conversation with the chairman, it's a multifaceted problem, and we want to try to keep working it.
Any other discussion?
So what's the request that we're voting on?
The current request we have a motion on the table for is to purchase the shredder out of the general fund and put regular plastics in with MSW temporarily. That is the current motion.
The cost of the shredder is 1.4. Is that what I'm reading here?
Ken has the specifics.
One even, I think there was some maintenance over that, but it's one thing to purchase.
Over 5 years.
5-year maintenance. The purchase is just one million.
So $1 million for a shredder is the request?
Yes. And just so it's clear, I heard someone in the crowd say this, I don't want to don't want it to be a town hall, but this is not for plastics. This,
I misspoke.
the fact that we put them together in the conversation, this is for construction and demolition debris. This is for the stuff that's being trucked to, that's right, trucked to Twin Chimneys, not the plastics.
Mr. Chairman, I'm making a substitute motion to approve the shredder and send the plastics question to committee of a whole. So if this gets a second and it's passed, the substitute motion will wipe out that first motion. We'll buy the shredder. This plastics issue will go to committee.
I'll second your substitute motion.
So, Mr. Chairman, there's absolutely no reason we can't do that. Because the timeline of all these discussions are long range. So taking it to the committee of the whole, so everybody can fully understand what we've been talking about with Mac, who ultimately can help, maybe provide deeper insights into it. There's no reason we can't do that.
Any other discussion there? I will say I'm a huge advocate for recycling because in school they got my daughter hooked on recycling, right? So it would be hard pressed to back up on that point. So I would like to look at options. So I do appreciate that. Any other discussion? All those in favor of this motion, please signify by raising your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you. That's the end of our committee report. Council correspondence.
Point of order.
Yes.
We just voted on his amendment, right? Don't we have to vote on the things?
Substituted motion.
Substitute motion, fair enough, sorry.
Thank you for that. Kept it clean and easy. All right, item 6 on the agenda is council correspondence. The council will hold a special call meeting on Monday, June 14th at 6 o'clock in council chambers of the administration facility. The next committee of the whole meeting will be on Monday, June 21st at 6 o'clock in the conference room of the admin building. Non-essential county offices will be closed on Monday, July 5th in observance for the Independence Day holiday. Due to non-essential county offices being closed on the 5th, the next council meeting will be held on Monday, July 12th at 6:30 in the council chambers of the admin building. Does anyone else have any correspondence that need to be announced? All right, at this time, item number 7, motion period and new business. We are now to our motion period. Does any member have any motions at this time? All right, hearing none, we'll move to item 8, council policy regarding communication. So we discussed this a little bit in the committee of the whole, and didn't really have anything to come out with. Since then, I've gotten with our legal entity, and kind of it's a spillover of that. So council communication in honor of full transparency, et cetera, FOIA, want to make sure that our council stays in line. We're very much in a changing time, especially with technology and the way technology allows our life to work. So I've asked Mr. Hendricks if he would prepare, I don't know if he has it with him available or wants to share just briefly kind of what we talked about. And we're really talking about communication in terms of how we communicate outside of the building, how we communicate individually, but as a whole.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I did some research and provided some short memo that I can provide to all of council. We can get that printed up for later. As you know, our different means of communication have grown so rapidly over the last decade or 2 decades that the laws and the communications are not meshed. The ability to communicate instantly in many different forms, whether it's social media, 20 years ago, do you remember texting anybody? No, of course not, you didn't do it. And email was the fast way of communication. And you still send letters through the postal service, which doesn't happen that often anymore because you're emailing. So the state government and federal government and local governments realized that effort needed to be made to become more transparent. And this council has embraced that thoroughly. You want to be transparent, you want to be open, and you're subject to something called the Freedom of Information Act. And the Freedom of Information Act really has two different issues that it deals with. One is meetings, what constitutes a meeting. If you have a meeting, you need to notify everybody that you're having a meeting. And the definition of meeting is when you get together, when a forum gets together to discuss business, and that's a meeting. So if forum, the council, gets together anywhere, however you get together, and you discuss business, that is a meeting. And you cannot do that if you don't notify the public prior to that. So you have to work within the boundaries of meetings. Now, we'll note that now that we have some committees that are two of them are a meeting. FOIA has some interesting aspects to it. One of the aspects is, well, what constitutes a meeting? Well, do you remember last spring in COVID, this body met by Zoom, by video. And I don't think anybody would argue that those were not valid meetings. So it's clear that you can have a meeting that's not in person. But the Freedom of Information Act has gone further than that, and it says that if you are communicating contemporaneously at the same time, then that's a meeting. So if four of you are texting back and forth, what do we want to do with this budget? What do we want to do on this policy? What do we want to do on that policy? And the four of you are doing that, that's a meeting, and you cannot do that without notifying the public. In addition to that, FOIA also requires that your communications or your publications, your public records, is the name of it all, are subject to discovery or subject to dissemination to the public if somebody asks for them. So if somebody says, Chairman, I would like to see the document regarding the budget of the solid waste materials. You would provide that to them. You would look for it, you would come up with it, and you provide that to them, and you're required to do that. Well, that also includes emails, and it also includes written conversations that you have. So documents, written conversations, which would include emails, are certainly included in that. So when you put all of those factors together, and we are operating as we all do, by sending text, by sending instant messages on whatever social media you're on, by communicating through social media, we need to have a policy in how we deal with that. One of the factors that you look at is it a meeting? So if it's a meeting, you can't do it without notifying people. The other factor is if you are creating documents, if you're generating written communications, those documents need to be able to be provided to the public when they ask for them. So that when they say, okay, Councilman, when did you talk about solid waste costs? To give us those documents, to give us those conversations that you have to be able to do that. Now, how do you do that with text? It'd be very difficult. How do you do that with social media? Some are easier than others. But the best way of doing it is through email. So if you have an email conversation and you do that through county servers, those are tracked. And we can search those emails, or the county can search those emails. I just have no ability to do that. Or 12-year-old who knows how to do it can do it. But we can search those emails and say, okay, give us all the topics, the emails that were sent by county council members on solid waste costs. Boom, you got it. You provide the answer to the question of the public, and your body is open and transparent, which is what you want. So,
and I do want to say this is purely a preemptive type conversation. I don't want anyone to misconstrue any of this. It's preparing for the future, preparing for the changes as they come down.
That's exactly right. And I would anticipate that more and more requests of this nature are going to be coming forward. So we need to prepare how we're going to respond to these requests. North Carolina, just a year ago, somebody decided that they were going to get all of the text of all of the agencies in North Carolina from a certain time period. And they sent those out. Every single agency responded. Okay? Nobody said text or not required, okay? But how would we do that? So we need to prepare, so council needs a policy on how to prepare for that.
I would like to make a motion, if I could, at this time, that we add legal consultation regarding communication to the executive for tonight.
I'll second it.
Second by Council Minister. Any discussion on my motion? In favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. Mr. Hendricks, if you'll please join us in a little while. All right, item 9 on the agenda, overriding Parks and Recreation Plan. Mr. Roper.
Yes, members of council, thank you. You remember we talked some about this during our your committee, the whole meeting. During that meeting, you requested some additional information because we were asking this council for money to go ahead and begin implementing kind of a phase 1 wayfinding signage program so that visitors to the county, locals to the county, new folks in the county would be able to find a lot of our county locations. Now that we've completed the marketing study, we think it's the time to start implementing it in that way. And so you'd asked for some more information. I've asked Allison Fowler and Tyler Merck to be here tonight to bring you some updated information on that and to ask for you all to consider using that money from fund balance to go ahead and start this program. So if it suits the council, I'll turn over to Ms. Fowler.
Thank you for being here, Ms. Fowler.
Absolutely, thanks for having me. So y'all did see a few weeks ago kind of our overall plan for parks and recreation tourism moving forward. So we looked at all of the parks that the county owns, as well as some of the other recommendations from the marketing plan. One of those recommendations was our wayfinding signage. Currently in the county, we don't have this at all. There's no county signs that direct you to any kind of thing where, say somebody comes in on 8, how do they know where to go without Google? There are places in our county where internet doesn't work, and you're kind of up in the mountains and you don't know where to go. You can't rely on Google. And so signage is just a great way. It's inviting, it's welcoming, it shows you where to go. These are just some examples, of what they would look like and what they might say on them. Our staff has traveled the entirety of the county over the course of 3 days, identifying locations for these signs. And our GIS department was helpful in creating an app for us to do this so that we could pinpoint all of them and create a map of where all of those signs would go. And so through meetings with the county engineer, we figured out kind of an overall cost of what we think this project will amount to. We've had conversations with both Oconee County and Anderson County about their plans. Oconee did one fairly recently, and so they were a good kind of information source for us on really what this would cost. They provided some, don't do's and some do's based on their experience, and so we took those to heart in trying to figure out how to go about this. And so we're estimating this project to cost around $275,000. That's with assistance in the DOT permitting process. It will probably take anywhere from 9 to 12 months from the minute we say go to get all of this implemented and the signage in place. And so we chose a simpler design because we want, say something new opens or something new comes or a sign gets damaged, we want to be able to replace those easily. And so this is something that our own signage department here at the county could easily replicate.
So do I have any questions for Ms. Fowler? Hearing none, I'll make a motion that we move forward with the signage as presented of the general fund tonight.
Is there a way we can pay for this out of tax money?
Is there a way we can pay for this out of a tax money?
We're playing stare off on who answers this question. There is, but it would take us multiple years to be able to do that. There's not enough money to do it in the way we would want to do it countywide at once.
How much do we have at this table that we could spend?
So 30% money of ATAX is all that we could spend on this project, and that's approximately $40,000 a year. Just depends on how much is brought in.
How much do we have in the account now?
It's about that much. That's about how much we have eligible.
We don't have any.
Because we do pretty good rolling that over and spending it. The way we spent the 30% money in previous 2 years was paying for the marketing study that made this type of recommendation.
Vice Chairman Cosman.
Is it possible to use the 30% money allocated in future years? In other words, we pay for it out of the general fund and then reimburse it?
I don't know that that would be allowed.
I
mean, it's a valid question, but I don't think that we'd be allowed to do that because the reporting requirements are time sensitive on ATAX. They tell you when you have to report.
Is it possible to take what we have and put it towards it and fund the rest of it? We've got to spend that money.
No, it would be whatever we have in there, but we do want to recognize there would be opportunity costs to that as well, that we might have some other use that we would think was valid. Right. Well, there's one coming.
If I could add to the DOT permitting process, the more we can do at one time, the easier and less expensive that is. If we have to permit one sign at a time, you're looking at $1,000 each time.
If we fund the whole amount, but partially funded, 40,000 of it would be funded through the ATAX, and then what we.
The next page has an additional money they're asking for out of the.
Yeah, I see they want to spend that on that, and.
I think that's a separate. I think that's the 12 mile. To that.
That's not the 30%
What?
one, because the 30%
No,
is the
no,
marketing
that's
money,
separate.
right?
Yeah.
30% of 185 is 54,000.
But this isn't.
No, 30% is the marketing, which is the use system.
No, what I'm thinking is if you take that 275 is there, you take 40 grand out of that, with 235. That's what we fund out of general fund, 40,000 out of ACAP. I know there's requests on the next page for 12 mile recreation.
Yeah, the 30% money is for marketing. That's 54,000. So the signage would be, take that 30%. What the restoration of 12 mile would come out of the other money.
So we got 40,000 we can put towards it. Am I correct?
Do we have a clarifying point I see conversation?
Ralph, is it 54,000?
Mr. Roper, do we have a clarifying point?
We may have. Well, I'll tell you, Mr. Greeno is not here prepared to opine on that issue, I don't believe, but we believe that with the funding year rolling over here July 1, that we'll be okay with that number, one way or the other. Is that fair to say, yes. Allison?
Is that 54 or 40?
I'm not sure what the 54 number is. There was 47,000 remaining out of last year's 65% ATAX funds that rolled over for the 65%, but that's a different money and we cannot spend that.
185,000, which is the total each year, times 30% is 54,000. Is that right, Ralph?
Take out your 25,000 that goes to the general fund.
So does that come out of the 30% money?
Well, no, it starts out at the top, and I don't mind coming up, or
Okay,
unless you can
so
hear me.
how much is the 30% money?
It's whatever we collect minus 25,000 times 30%.
Okay, so 185.
So if you do 200,000, it's 175 times 30%.
Yeah, you're right, right on 47. You're right.
47, which is what you said.
That's under 30%.
So are we going to get another for that starting in July?
That's what we're saying, is that we're going to get another amount in July. That's what we're saying. Yeah, 47, we can do that.
Well, Vice
We've already spent that money this year.
Vice Chairman.
Would you like to make that as a motion?
Yeah, I'll change my motion to be, use the ATAX money and, with the 30% ATAX money and fund the rest out of general fund.
Change my second to your second.
Any other discussion over that?
Yeah, I'd like to just kind of weigh in on the whole thing. There's two issues here. One is, to me, is the issue how you fund it. Do you fund it with general fund money, or do you fund it with ATAX money, which is dedicated to tourism? The second issue is the order in which you spend this money. What's the priority? General fund money is like gold because you can spend it on anything. And when I look at EMS, how the calls are going up and the call responses are getting so lengthy, I look at solid waste, you go there and the bins are full. Those are vital services that general fund money should go to. Really, signs is not as vital as those things. I mean, a person looks at their GPS. My daughter probably will never look at a sign again. I understand you want to get the signs uniform and everything looking nice. I just don't think I would spend general fund money on that. I like the idea of spending the ATAX money, maybe borrowing against the general fund, if that's doable, and pay for it with ATAX money. The second thing is, it's just the order in which you want to spend things. You want to spend money on signs first, it seems like. I wouldn't. I mean, you've got plans to get 3 parks up to standard. One is the, Katiki Point, Long Shoals, what's it, Econi Point, the other one? Is that how you pronounce it? Those 3 parks, you can spend 52 grand on those parks and get them up to standard. I would do that first. Signs are not important. Honestly, I probably would take most of the signs down. People are not going to use signs. You know, the ones that you feel that you don't like. I mean, so what I would do is I would focus spending this money on things that are going to impact people directly, which is the parks, the restoration of the parks, and second signage. That would be my order. I'm not going to vote against it because of that, but that's just the way I look at it. But the funding part, I would definitely look to fund all of it out of the ATAX money, as much as we could.
Any other discussion?
Would it take 3 years to do it out of the ATAX money? We'd have to do this in 3 separate parts based on the amounts?
Closer to.
Is there a reason?
I would say more than 3 years, if you're only getting 40,000 each time.
47.
Estimated. Of course, we don't know the numbers for the future years for ATAX.
I got completely lost in the flurry of percentages and numbers earlier. So at $47,000, how long does it take to do the majority of it?
It would take at least 5.5 years, and I mean that's administrator math, so that might not be exactly right. But the other thing you'd realize there is that you're committing that ATAX funding flow, that 30% money, which has a wide variety of uses, to just that use. The proposal that we have tonight, and of course you gentlemen are the arbiters of this, but the proposal we have tonight would be that we've got significant money in a fund balance. Let's spend a small portion of that on getting our signs right and consistent with our brand and take advantage of this opportunity now. So that's the gist of the proposal.
So, Mr. Chairman, so I think I'd just say this. My business works around lakes within 50 miles of here, and sometimes on Lake Lanier and whatnot. And our county is certainly not putting forward the best foot with regards to the branding and some of the things you guys are shooting to do. We see it, all around in the areas that are being developed, particularly with second homes and investment homes, et cetera. So there's an upscale opportunity associated with putting your best foot forward, particularly to get people to come in and invest in your area. Not necessarily looking at across the county, but when we talked about it, there are definitely going to be some areas where they're going to come. And telling people where they're going, you're talking about most of these folks are 60, 70, retired folks. They're not even part of the generation that came up with Facebook and with using the GPS and whatnot. Those folks call me all the time and want to spend 15 minutes giving me directions to a place that I'm going to follow a GPS to. So I would just say, to counter Mr. Sada's motion, his daughter and my daughter will never use it, but they also don't understand why people buy magazines. The folks that are going to use these signs are the folks that still use maps. So I think there's certainly an opportunity here to put together a strong brand statement about Pickens County, but also to inform folks. I agree with what you said. It seems like an awful lot of money.
So the only thing I'll say is I do know that, like, during the watermelon crawl at Hagenville, there was at least half a dozen people that came and said, if they discover to find this place, you don't have any signs. The Performing Arts Center, I've had multiple requests because we've got people that are traveling from out of town that have no idea where to go, where to turn, where it is. To me, this makes it uniform. We do it all at once. It's a portion of the ATAX funding to be able to do it. And I think this is a step in the right way.
Mr. Chairman, my doctor, I think it was 4 years ago, wanted to visit this waterfall. And there's no sign to that waterfall. He got a book from the library and used it to somehow get to that waterfall. And so it's not just the poor people who need the signs. Affluent people need it too.
Thank you, Mr. Francis.
I just have one question. So the numbers are the 47,000 is the 30% money. How much of that money do we have now? Anything?
Unless Mr. Reno's still prepared to discuss
That we're speculating on that. I know that July 1 will get, there'll be a new
Another
budget year.
47. How much do you have now?
I don't have the report in front of me, but normally that money just goes on out, based on council's directive. I believe, now I have to go back and look at the report, I believe we take a portion of that, I think it's 24,000, that helps goes and funds Hey Good Meal every year, so you'd have to take that into account. There is a possibility, I'd like to research it more along with the attorney, that you could use the local accommodations fee that the county collects, the 1.5, or I think it's 1.5, 3% money to pay for these signs if you don't want to use the general fund.
What's the aggregate on that money?
The aggregate, we generally collect around $400,000 a year on the local. About half of that goes into operational cost, and then the other half can go towards capital type items. We've done a lot of work out at the Haygood, out at the Mile Creek Park with upgrades out there. So you could possibly use the local accommodation fee to pay for these signs outside of the general fund if you choose. Okay. But I would think most of that local.
Mr. Roper.
Yeah, I would just say that this is part of the problem talking about these things, and I appreciate the staff members being willing to speculate a little bit, and I certainly appreciate the questions too. But as our proposal was from general fund, we were more prepared to talk about that part of it. But we could say this: if this council wants to exhaust every available A-tax, whether local or state, without dipping into the committee portions, you remember the other portions, not the 30%. If looking at the local and looking at the 30%, if you want us to come back to you and report every penny that we can from that to help jumpstart this, certainly we're open to that and would follow your direction on that.
I'll change my motion again to have staff exhaust every A-tax funding source available as discussed prior to using general fund money to move forward with this signage plan.
Thank you for that.
I'll second that. I guess that wasn't a motion, was it?
It was a motion.
Okay, I'll second it.
So, point of clarification, Mr. Chairman, you said spend all of it, or spend everything that's available after the other obligations?
Look into options.
I'm saying exhaust all other options, so if that money is tied up somewhere else, I'm not for robbing Peter to pay Paul here.
But still, you're saying fully funded?
Fully funded. To try to fully fund it with A-tax funds.
And we'll exhaust everything.
Including loaning A-tax funds from the future.
We'll check into that as well. That's an idea I've not thought of.
That's good. Any other discussion there? Does that clarify? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All right. Carries. You have another item for us under overlying parks. Mr. Roper, page 2. We just talked signs.
Oh, 12. So this can be discussed if you'd prefer when the other A-tax applications are discussed. We talked to the city of Clemson and the Corps back in the fall about the potential takeover of 12 Mile Recreation Area. The city of Clemson ended up being the lead on that, and we were the support partner. And one of the things that they requested was a total of $18,500 to get their project up and running, get the area ready for what they wanted to use it for. And I'm happy to provide more details about exactly what they wanted to do out there if you would like, but I just wanted to make y'all aware of this. And it is listed along with the other A-tax recommendations from the committee.
We have not seen those. So I would think this would be something we'd want to wait and see all at one time. Gentlemen, do you agree?
Yes.
I was going to ask, do we have any details on this yet?
Not yet.
No.
That would be in the packet with the others. Yes. So we'll do that all at one time if that's all right with you gentlemen.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, let's go on to item number 10, the 2021 Recreation Funding Request Recommendations. You should all have before you the 2021 request. We went through these in, I believe, a budget work session. Vice Chairman Costa.
Does this include the request from, I apologize, this is 6.
It doesn't have any of those items in it.
The other, so do you want, just,
Let's make a motion and then amend it.
yeah, no, add those other items that we approved during committee, or the budget work session on the rec committee.
I'll second that.
Can I,
Discussion on the amendment to add the items.
yeah, and discussion on that. We also had, we got back at the time of our meeting, we had not gotten the report back from 6 Mile that went through the ATAX committee. That is now back here.
Rec fund committee.
Okay, for $16,125. I hate to say this, but can we amend the amendment?
I apologize, I wasn't paying attention. Yeah, I will.
You going to withdraw your amendment?
Withdraw it and add 6 Mile into it?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Add
I've looked at it,
everything we
it
talked
looks
about
good.
before, but, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'll amend my second.
So this will be the amounts that we had the discussion during our committee of the whole meeting, right? So do we need to review those?
It's those amounts right there.
Where is that at?
It's at the $9,528.52 and $6,079.
That's right.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. And so for the folks that are here, council, every district gets $50,000, if you don't mind, Chairman. Every district gets $50,000 historically, or when I say historically, the last 10 or more years. In the Dacusville area, we've spent a third of that money on cutting grass and carrying out the garbage up at the ball fields and most likely some portion of the rec center. In a previous discussion with all my colleagues, without putting that on the table, I asked, how do you use your monies? And unanimously, it was use your money on one-time expenses and investments in infrastructure, not on cutting grass and operational expenses like that. So what was proposed to me originally by the Dacusville Rec folks was a significant amount of funding for, again, I think it was almost $17,000 to cut grass and for a dumpster, and I think maybe some fees for picking up the garbage, in addition to the removal of a playground and replacement of the playground with a handy-capable system. I removed that from the plan because it didn't seem well-developed there as far as the selection of equipment, et cetera. And I think there needs to be more input to that because it wasn't designed to be as open as it could be for lots of, for particular children with disabilities. So I think there's a better plan that we could come up with for that particular amount of money. And we voted to take the $17,000 out and for the county to treat all the areas that they don't have agreements for, where the county owns the land equally, and to take over that service in some form or fashion. We'll still have some money there for trimming and for the soccer folks to make the field accessible for the kids or whatnot to the degree that they need it, but the county would help us in those regards. And what that benefits us is explosive growth and development in District 6, both in the Dacusville area and south of the Dacusville area. It's increasing the number of kids and folks that would need recreational activities. And for me to spend a third of my money on cutting grass in Dacusville, while the other folks are able to spend $50,000 a year in investments and operate in capital assets to help with that, it sort of puts us under the gun for an area where we're going to be growing significantly. And while I certainly continue to focus on the Dacusville area because it's so far away from the facilities in Pickens and in Easley and Will Liberty, we certainly need to also be able to invest in other parts of the area, which is not necessarily something we've been able to do in the past. So the county taking over that operational expense frees up some monies that allow us to do some things fairly significant for all the kids in my district, particularly the kids, because most of them aren't associated with the municipality. And a lot of parents aren't able to drive long distances to take their kids to ball and whatnot. So I think it's a good step forward for our particular district.
Any further discussion on the amendments?
Just restate the amendment.
The amendment is to accept the funding, recommended recreation funding request from District 6 and from District 3. No, not District 3, but your District 3.
Two, 6 Mile.
Picking up the 6 Mile, thank you. One that we talked about with the soccer club and the Bakersfield Recreation in our budget meeting, and the other that was submitted by Councilman Wonder.
For 6 Mile, that is the amendment. Any further discussion?
So I'm going to make a substitute motion that does the initial page that we have, those two amendments, and I'm gonna add one thing to it.
There's actually 3 amendments.
3 amendments. I'm gonna add one thing to it. The money that I have will roll to next year.
You don't have to amend it.
I think I was told I had.
Automatically rolls.
No.
No, you have to roll it.
We never had.
Or have
Well, I
a,
was
You don't
told-
spend it, it
I've
stays
had
in your account.
$150,000 to roll.
You don't have to, you
Do
don't
you
have
make a
to.
motion every year?
No.
No.
Okay, so
No.
what's the answer? Because I was told I need to do that.
I was under the impression that you did have to, I mean, as a part of when we're approving the recreation funding, you're stating that my money is rolling next year.
We've never done it on any, we've never made that motion before,
I've never rolled it.
ever.
I was always under that impression.
So there's no downside. I'll second his amendment because there's no downside to do
There's no
it.
downside to it. It's just,
Well,
if
no,
you're
let's
not
just,
spending
what
it,
is
it stays in
what
the
is the
account.
procedure? Do I need to make a motion to roll it or not?
No.
Mr. Rucker, what is our policy state on Mr. Hendrickson?
It's your decision on how you want to do it. You want to make it clear, or you have a council, you want to direct do it that way. Done that way in the past, continue to do it that way. Let's say that you want to make a motion that's perfectly clear that that's what's going to happen, that's fine. But however, this council decision.
If it's not necessary, why do it?
I think you're
So
right.
it's not necessary?
I'll just say, and I'll defer to legal counsel, we've always put that in a separate fund throughout the year, and then at the end of the year, we just roll that money forward, and then that's a carry forward balance. Yes.
Okay, so I'm not.
We have
I'm-
17
we're
wallets.
rolling.
I misunderstood.
Stand correct.
$17. We pull money out of each wallet to go spend something.
It's interesting. yeah.
all right, so I have a motion to,
It is great.
a substitute motion to adopt the sheet and the 3 emotions
Yes.
that were presented for amendment.
But I just have, all right, you need a second on that.
I need a second on that. I'll second your substitute motion.
Okay, my thing is, when it came to cutting the grass at the buildings we owned, and we gave it to let nonprofits use it, I thought there was gonna be a look at all those profits.
We haven't done that yet. That's not in the
Oh, it's
motion.
separate.
That's not in the motion.
Okay, I'm just hearing too much.
Yes, there's a lot going back and forth. So what we're voting on tonight is the rec fund recommendations from the committee as amended through the budget work sessions and these 3 additional from tonight. That is what we're voting on at this time. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. That's done. Woo. Good time.
That was an easy one.
Yeah. Item number 11 on tonight's agenda, it's labeled second reading, but I believe, Madam Clerk, I believe this is third reading, looking over the previous minutes. This would be third reading of ordinance number 598 to provide for adoption of a budget amendment containing estimates of revenue and expenditure changes for Pickens County for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2020 and ending June 30, 2021. Just for clarity, this is the current operating budget year that we're in and amendments related thereto. Am I correct on that? Do I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Do I have a second by Councilman Fenster? Discussion.
This looks great. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Other than Mr. Greeno's kudos. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Item 12 on tonight's agenda is second reading of ordinance number 599 to provide for the levy of taxes in Pickens County for ordinary county purposes for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021 and ending June 30, 2022, and to direct the expenditures thereof. Do I have a motion and second that this be second reading of ordinance number 599?
Motion?
Motion by Councilman Feimster. Do I have a second? Second by Councilman Whitehurst. Discussion.
So, Mr. Chairman, so these are the items that are on here that were the amendments, or do we need to make motions to add these into the second reading?
So my understanding, you all have before you amendments for council's consideration for the 2022 budget, and this would be the time that you would make your motion for those amendments.
I make a motion to accept all 4 of them. The first one we approved, and the next 4 on the top part of the page, I would make a motion to accept all let's see, except that second one, isn't that motion upkeep lawn maintenance? Did we approve that?
That was the recommendation. Now, we're going through that, Mr. Chairman, we're going through that now, identifying where we have agreements in place, and that's sort of this process.
And there's actually a note, for clarification, there is a note there that the attorney actually suggests that we categorize those facilities before we make any final motion, which this would be considered a final motion.
Yeah.
So we need to hold off on that,
Hold off on 2.
on item number 2.
Okay, so my motion is to accept the budget as is in those 3 motions at the bottom.
Chairman, point of order, I make a recommendation that we vote on each item individually since there's only 3, but I'd like to, plus the first one, but I have something.
Okay, I have a motion on the table. I don't hear a second.
Yeah,
Second by Councilman
look 'em
Wyhurst.
individually is fine.
Individual is fine. Councilman Sater, you have a motion on the table to adopt them all. Do you want to withdraw your motion?
Well, I didn't get a second, so it's dead.
Okay. I'm not gonna repeat it, okay.
That's fine.
No, we're getting deep into Robert's rules.
We are. Y'all, you guys have like beyond stretched my.
So, I asked for, I called for the vote on voting on each one individually first.
Okay, and I have a second on that. All in favor of voting individually, please signify by raising your hand. Okay.
All right, I'd like to add the allocation of the $200,000 in the city of Easley for a fire engine. This is something we talked about in the first budget meeting, but we never made a motion to add to, that we voted on unanimously. Remember, the
Yes,
guy
yes.
from Easley talked to us about it,
I'll second that motion.
and I think that needs to be added up there.
So we're going to do each one individually. You can make a motion to that one individually to add 200,000 to easily
Yep.
fire, and then we'll vote on that, and then, is that, because that's what we decided to do.
That's exactly what we're gonna do. So is that your motion?
Yes.
And I'll second it. Discussion on that, allocating 200,000 to the city of Easley for fire engine. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Okay. Next.
I'm going to make a motion to make the local commitment from the county government to be 3.2 million, which is above the required amount from the state, which we're required to do by regulation, to fund the library. 3.2 million.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion there.
Mr. Chairman?
Vice Chairman Cutchin.
I don't think that the library is going to be the answer to our road. I don't think that at this time we should enter into where we're making that reduction. I believe that they should be funded at the level that they requested, which was a reduction year over year from what I understand. And then we have an ongoing conversation with the library on their plans for the future.
So to your point, I actually think we should fully fund them to their budgeted amount of $3,681,621. If you look in your budget book, there's actually, it shows a $12,000 revenue, and that comes from the Friends of the Library, which is not guaranteed money. So their actual budgeted amount should be $3,693,621 would be, you know, if you took the 12,000 out and added that in. So I agree. I think we should fully fund them to their expenditure level, their funding level. While I agree with the comments earlier about the overage, I do think that can be addressed, but I do think we should fully make sure they're fully funded to their budgeted amount. I agree with that.
Okay, I have some comments. So you're saying the 3.6 million is the local commitment?
No, I'm saying that is what their budget amount is.
That is the total amount?
But
Okay,
part of that comes from state.
So the local commitment would be what?
3.3. Let's see, I did that math earlier and I don't have it. What did they get from the state? 238?
And then they collect fees as well. So they got about 300 from the state in fees.
It's pretty close to 3.2.
Be about 3.3.
I just want to make sure they're fully funded to their expenditure amount. I mean, I understand the argument over the overage, I really do. And I don't know if there's a way to word that to make sure that between state and fees and us, they get to that number they need to be at. I just don't want them with a shortage.
Mr. Chairman, so that I understand, the fiscal 2020 budget on page 112, the request made by staff, Mr. Roper, 3.681621. And you're saying that they actually have, that's expenditure. Yeah, I'm a little, yeah, on their budget on expenditures, 3.681621 on expenditure.
That's not what our funding would be though, because they have multiple sources of income.
Correct, so their funding from us is 3.664338, and then intergovernmental 238,448, charges for services, 35,000, the contribution is 12.
You can't count the contributions, that's not guaranteed money.
112.
It's 3408173 is if you back out the intergovernmental and the charges for service. Oh, I got to back the 12 out too. No, I don't back 12, I had the 12. So it's 3,420,173 if you back out the intergovernmental and charges for services. So 3.4.
So you're saying the local commitment should be 3.4?
I think that's what it takes to make them whole according to these numbers.
Okay, let me respond to all this. A lot's been said about this. And you can see it's confusing. When it comes to the library, it's very confusing, and some people are using the word cut in a confusing and disingenuous way. Under the plan that I proposed, library spending grows every year. It's not going to be cut. But instead of it growing like this, it's going to grow like this. It's going to grow at a lower rate. So spending will rise every year. State regulation requires the county council not to cut the funding used to pay for the library expenses. So for 2021 and 22, the law requires local taxes from the county council to the library to be at least 3.1 million. So the notion that it's being cut, we can't do that. It's against regulation. Again, instead of this growth, we're seeing this. Some will call that a cut, but it's not. It's just a smaller increase each year. And that's my plan. My proposal doesn't give them the required 3.1. It gives them the 3.2 million of local funds, plus 300,000 of state money, plus their fees, gives them 3.5 million. If they spend every dime of that, that would be record spending for the library. I don't see what they're talking about cut. Let me finish. Library spending is going to continue to grow, but at a slower rate. And the reason I want it to grow at a slower rate is the cash balances at the library have just been going up and up and up. In 2013, had 1.4 million cash on June 30th. 2015, 1.7 million. 2017, 2.1 million. 2019, 2.4 million. Last year, 2.9 million. So what's happening is their revenue is excessive to their expenses, and they're just banking money at a high rate. Last year, they saved nearly $500,000 in the bank. They're likely to add another $300,000 or $400,000 this year. Under my proposal, they'll add a little bit, but if you go up another few $100,000, that's all going to go in the bank, probably. And that's what I'm arguing against. So I propose dialing back the revenue growth to divert some of that excess money that would otherwise go in their savings account to roads.
No, and I think I agree with you, Mr. Saylor. I really do. I just think our numbers are totally different.
Well, I mean,
I don't have the 300,000 figure from the intergovernmental. All I got to go off of is the 238,448 because from the indication we've gotten so far, that's what they're going to get.
yes, plus the 70, I said state money and fees. That's 300 grand.
Well, you said state money and fees. It was 335. I thought.
Did I say 300? No, I said 300. I thought I said 300. It was 3.2
and I still,
plus
doing
300.
that math, I still got them. They need 3.4 to be able to meet their expenditures of 3.6, which is actually down from last year.
No, but when you actually hold on, when you actually look at actual spending,
I think I'm first.
Okay, Mr. Wilson.
All right, so I'm taking a whole bunch of math classes. I'm a little bit lost here. Let me just make sure I'm understanding this. They asked for 3.66 million. You take off 238,000, and you take off the 35 that we were talking about a second ago, you're down to 33.87, right? Plus or minus a few. So if you're 3.387, and we're asking, we didn't ask before Alex and I on the board, there was an agreement for them to take on the library, take on the museum. There was about a 90,000, they were gonna just roll it into their activities without, and we were going to bank the 90,000 on to save it.
We can't hear you.
So if they were going to roll that in, and it was a surprise to them that their funding was going to be lower, there's about $140,000 difference between what Alex is talking about and what Chris is talking about. If they're going to take the museum and they take the funding, we're arguing about $40,000 in a budget. We already know when the millage changes is going to grow for them. So somebody here can give, I think, on one side or the other, $40,000. Let them keep the 90 for the museum for the first year, and we're just about whole here with the budget that you're proposing, Chris.
You know, I really don't know. I don't think so. I think.
I'm just doing the basic adds and subtracts here.
Well, that's exactly what I did, is I took the 3.681621, I subtracted 238, 448, I subtracted 35, and then I added the 12 because I don't believe we can count. You can't predict whether Friends of the Library is going to give them another $12,000.
Okay, so it's 3.4.
And I got 3.420173.
Okay,
and
so
that's the number that makes them whole.
So the gap between Alex, I'm with you from the very beginning on what you're talking about doing, and I have also benefited from the mischaracterizations and the negativities associated with it. But the opposite side of that coin here is, if we don't take the 90 grand for taking the museum, let's just, for this year, the agreement was we would keep the 90 grand. If we don't take that, then, and they spend it from this amount of money here, we're talking about the difference in $100,000 and $3.3 million.
So what you're saying is his 3.4 million goes to 3.3 because they take the museum and we have 90,000 savings.
I don't think
That's
so.
3.3 million.
I don't think so, because this 3.6 didn't include the museum conversation at all.
As it sits in the budget in front of you, it does not include taking over operation of the museum. That was an idea we had.
You would actually have to add 90 during that.
Well, no.
This does not include.
No, what I'm saying,
The point is if we let them take it over and not give them the 90 grand.
Then we all should be happy. It sucks for both sides.
It's a compromise.
It's a compromise. They take it over, we keep the 90 grand, it brings it within $50,000 of where we were.
And for me personally, I would prefer that the next time that the library folks come to us, and have the common decency to ask us individual questions before going, public with a smear campaign. That to me, we make a compromise here, and then we look for folks to just pick up the telephone call next time you guys have a question.
Mr.
Wilson, Mr. Seda, you guys have had lengthy conversations about a budgeting process, and I'm going to agree with you. I would like to see us have more communication on the front end and begin these conversations with the folks at the library or with whatever department early on as to what is our plan, how does it align with the goals and that we have as a council, and then how can we work together to achieve their goals? Because if you go back several years, they didn't have this kind of money in there. It's not that you want to. They've been frugal. I mean, they've done really well with saving this money, and they've got plans to spend a good bit of this money, which is going to help further the council. So my only request is to agree with you guys on the budgeting process, that we begin the conversations and communicate early on, and that we are as transparent as we can be with the community and with them. And I think we'll eliminate a need for any smear campaign.
And we actually discussed the fact that in the fall, I think would be the opportune time to have that conversation, and with the library board's input, seeing their overlaying plan, their strategic plan. I do know they have a long list of things they want to do, and they don't want to have to borrow money to do it. They also know that they have to keep about $1 million in the bank for cash flow, because we are talking tax dollars, and you have ebbs and flows. So they know that $1 million is zero when it comes to comes to that, or at least that's the idea that has been had. So I think that all is something we have to keep in mind this year. But moving forward, the expectation is in the fall, we're going to have a conversation. At least that's the vibe in the field, and very receptive to that. So I will say that. Councilman Pickens.
There's an elephant in the room. It's called inflation. I don't know whether you guys have been watching the financial situation lately, but I'm afraid that's going to eat into all of our county budget.
That'll increase the millage.
It'll also increase payroll, it'll also increase capital, it'll also increase.
Right. So everything will, yeah.
Yeah.
So basically the compromise is local funding's 3.4 million, like you say, but they take the museum and the 90,000 saving goes to the general fund.
I don't know that we can split that because that's an agreement with that board. We'd have to have that agreement drawn up and signed off on, correct? Legal services?
Didn't they, but we've had that conversation.
We had preliminary discussion. I've never seen a legal document in front of me. Mr. Roper, Mr. Higgins.
So what was the conversation? I mean, I was under the impression they were like, yeah, we'll be happy to take that on.
Yeah, so at the current funding level, at the current budgeted amount, which is 3.681 in expenditures, the library director and I had agreed, and I talked to my Parks and Rec folks about it, that this would be a good synergy for the museum and for the library. The olive branch in the process and the willingness of the library was to absorb the cost within that existing budget because they knew they had some room to do it. So they were going to absorb that, but that was the understanding with the numbers in the printed book. I can't speak to any understanding beyond that.
So what we're doing is going to the numbers in the printed book and then taking that on, because you said our funding would be 3.4, which is what's in the book.
Well,
our portion of it, total funding is 3.6, but our portion is 3.4.
Well, I think actually the 3.9 number is the number that he's referring to in the printed book, not the 3.6 number.
Yeah, I think you're right.
The difference.
What the hell?
No, it's because half of the time, Mr. Whitehurst, if I could, I think I understand the frustration, but
Suddenly we just invented $300,000.
Half of the time in this conversation, you all are talking about the revenue into this organization, the revenue, and the revenue is projected to be $268,165 more than the requested budget. So that's going into savings. But I watch you because we do this. Ralph gets on to me about this. It's very easy to then start talking about the expenses. But the revenue that's in that.
But that's because the millage is set where it is. If we're going to say
right.
This is how much we're going to fund, we will match the millage later. If we're funding it for that much, then the millage, we'll make the millage match later.
And not to enter into the political debate, because I have no opinion on that, but the easiest way for me to encapsulate this is we're talking about $268,000 and $165. $268,165. That's what we're talking about. That's the money that the library is bringing in revenues that they do not have an expense to match. That's going into their savings account. That, to me, is the delta. I might be wrong about that.
I disagree. Okay. What I'm doing is I'm looking at actual spending. 3.3 million is what they spent last year. I want to raise it to 3.5. 200,000 divided by 3.3 is about 7% increase. Getting about a 7% increase under my proposal. Okay? They want to go from 3.3 in actual spending to 3.68. They want a 10% increase. That's it. It's this versus this. Well, I'm saying, hold on, let me finish. I'm saying 7% over the actual number. No, but it's got to be 10%. Like I said, when you're talking cut, there's no cuts here. We're talking about how big is the increase going to be. And that's my issue.
Well, by definition, it is a cut because we budgeted in 2021 for it to be at 3.7 was what their spending was. So anything under 3.7 by definition is a cut. I mean, getting down to semantics of it.
That's a reduction in the increase.
I'm looking at actual spending.
That's
Well, I don't have actual numbers because I'm going off of budgeted for 2021 and there's not an actual there yet.
We have an actual.
But
We
you
won't
have,
until June
It's
30th.
probably gonna be much less, given they were closed probably for a good amount of time. That's why I'm not using 21, right? I'm not using this year because those numbers are probably, their expenses this year are probably
But by
very depressed.
definition, Councilman Seda, just out of respect, by definition, we budgeted 3.7.
You did.
And anything under that by definition, even my proposal is a cut by definition, but it's not.
It's not, budgets and figures don't pay for things. Actual spending does. We spent 3.3 million. That's the number I'm looking at. Are we gonna grow from what we actually spent or not?
I apologize, Vice Chairman Costner. You've been asking for the floor.
Thank you. So, whether you want to believe the number or not, we still have to go off of an actual projected number of where they believe they're going to be as far as expenses are for 2021. According to this number in this book, if they believe they're going to be at 3.724. I do know that the library stepped up and gave us people during the election process. They had people that stepped up and worked their butts off, and I don't think we gave them any additional funding for that. So they requested a reduction from 3.72 in expenditures to 3.681 in expenditures. On the flip side of that, they requested on their budget line the 3.4 increase to 3.664 for the revenue. So when you add those numbers all back in, including the contributions, which I do agree with Mr. Chairman, that you can't count on the 12,000, still comes to that 3.9. It's not necessarily a cut, it's a reduction, and it's a reduction in opportunity.
so what we're doing is we're taking another close to 268,000 and putting it once again into that bank account that every other department has to go back to the general fund.
Mr. Rogers, I agree with you that in the sense that I don't know why previous council set it up to be this way. I think it's nuts. They set it up to have the ability to do that. Personally, what I would say at the beginning is that I wish that our budgetary process, which as these two gentlemen described, that we would sit down and go, guys, last year you brought in this much money, you spent this much money. What's our plan going forward based on the council's wishes as a whole? What are our goals? And then we work together towards that throughout the course of that year until we get to the next budget cycle, as opposed to sitting up here and going, well, we can save us some money this way, let's just do it.
Well, the reason for that is because it is an education mill, okay? It is a different mill, and that's why the library is separate from everything else, because of the way the mill is calculated, and that's the only reason.
I understand the education mill. Does Mr. Roper, does it have to be set up on an education mill, or other counties have education mills set up for their library system?
I don't know the answer to that question. I know that it's not, well, let's flip it the other way. You're excluded from calculation on the industrial tax benefits. Those uses are excluded, so it doesn't have to be included. You would be cutting it yourself to do it that way. Right.
But you don't have to, they don't have to be on millage. Half the counties.
And he's exactly right about that. They don't have to be.
So, Councilman Willis, we talked about this in our last meeting. If we adjust their funding down and they come back just like every other department in the county, if they don't spend it, it goes back to general fund. If we take the growth that they were hoping for that they don't get, and I can't get my head around the idea that if you propose a budget and you don't get it, then that's a cut. Anywhere I've ever been, it's not a cut. But the reality of this is, what we're talking about is instead of them putting it in their bank account, it's not accessible to everything else we do. And I personally think EMT, the sheriff, garbage, I mean, there's a whole lot of things the county does. This is massively important. Library is incredibly important, and it benefited me as a person. I've been a customer my entire life. But we have a lot of mandates to benefit the people. So we're just saying keep it in the general fund, and it's available for all sorts of things. You know, huge disaster for us to have to, go invest. If somebody else within our county has a great needle-moving idea and proposal, we have it available to that. And they can always come back to us and say, hey, we want to do X, Y, and Z. Will you support that from a capital investment? So just because we keep it in the general fund doesn't mean that they can't come back and say, hey, we have a great idea, transparently communicate the impact of that idea. All we're basically saying is based on what we're talking about, is we as a council are voting on, yeah, it sounds like a great idea for them to put more money in their own bank account that we'll never have access to for the entire county's good. The library has not outweighed the benefits or overachieved the benefits of some of the other organizations who aren't treated the same way. So if they don't grow quite as much as they had hoped for, not a cut. If they still have access through us to other funding, if they have a great idea, not a cut. So they're not losing anything for us not to grow their budget. We are losing access to a significant amount of funding. And I mean, personally, I've been in huge organizations, and there's nowhere, no matter how rich they are, that 200 grand is not real money.
So, and to your point, that's why I suggested the 3,420,173, which takes the 244,165, because I disagree with the 268 number.
So here's the
take that off the table, and that's exactly what I'm doing.
Can I make a substitute amendment? We take this off the table until we know what we have an agreement about the museum funds.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to take it off the table until we know about the museum. What's the timeline, do you think, on knowing more about the museum? I mean, you gotta remember, we're approaching the end of the month, and we've gotta have third reading before the end of the month. We do have a special call on the 14th for that, but if we keep Ken too far. No one knows the answer to that. So all in favor of this substitute motion, please signify by raising your hand. 3, opposed? 3. So it dies, so it's back on the table.
So my motion is to accept a compromise and say local commitment of $3.3 million. This way they'll get $3.6 million.
I have a motion for $3.3 million of local commitment. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Councilman Wilson.
So let's clarify that. That's down from the number here, roughly equivalent to what we talked about doing for the library, or for the museum. And I would assume that they would not want to take the museum without keeping the money. So we're kind of middle here.
Let me clarify. They spent $3.3 million last year. They're going to get $300,000 in state money and fees that they collect. They'll get $3.6 million.
Fair enough.
That'll be $300,000 more than they spent last time. And if they spent every dime of that, it's going to be a record.
By last time, you mean 2020 when they had a real year?
Yeah, when it had a real year. They, like I said, they got $2.9 million in the bank as of last year. They're probably saving another $400,000 in this current year. Last year, they saved $136,000. The year before that, they saved $344,000. If we accept this budget as is, they're going to probably save another few $100,000. I'm just trying to say this is enough.
Vice Chairman Costa.
I have a question for staff. How much is their expenditures year to date? I do not have that with me right now, but so how can we operate off of 2023.3 when you've got a forecast budget expenditure of 3.7 and he's calling it 3. There's $400,000 difference there. I'm asking in general, not to you. I'm sorry, it's not you. It wasn't a question. I don't know how I can make an informed decision when we're making up numbers. I need to know what the actual number is.
Agreed. You mean for this current year that we're in now?
This current year, because you believe it's going to be significantly less.
And that's why I'm not using it, because I think it's unfair to them.
But that's an assumption that, how do you get I want to know what the actual number is.
You know why? Because I asked Ralph how much was in their account as of now. It was $3.6 million. So what that means is they're not spending what revenue's coming in as much as we thought. So that savings is going even higher. That was without seeing the numbers, but when you knew how much was in the account, it's growing faster because expenditures are probably lagging. I could be wrong. Given how strong, that's my hunch, but I could be wrong. Let's ask them to do it.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Ralph, just get that number.
No, ma'am. All right, so I have a motion to fund it 3.3 and a second. Any other discussion there, Councilman Waters?
I think we got to come up I'm not fully understanding. We had when you said you wanted to do 3.4, was that the total that's gonna come from us?
Local commitment, 3/4/2173.
And your motion is 3.3. Now, this 268,000 is on top of that goes to their revenues, right?
No. So that's actually the semantics that we're arguing at this moment. I say that it's 244,165, it's 268, which is his number is actually higher than 268, mine's lower than 268. Either way, that's what we're trying to eliminate, is that overage.
Right.
That's built into the budget.
I got that. I'm just trying to see, is it this 3.4 is basically taking that out? Because you got a budget here of 3.9 or something, or what you told me with
my number takes out 244,165 of what's published in the book.
Okay, so now if we go with what we have here, when we do the millage in the fall, we can mill this thing to where it is, can we not?
Oh, we'll set the budget and the millage follows the budget.
So we can make the millage follow the budget?
Yep. That's the way it works.
I understand, but see, in the past, we've not changed that millage on that. We can change that millage.
The millage should reflect whatever the budget we approved is.
It doesn't. That's the whole point. That's why it's been going up like it has. This is not reflected. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is to get the budget to reflect the millage. But we can do that in the fall. If you're telling me we got a difference of $100,000, and they've said that they're open to taking on that, even though we don't have a definite agreement on that, but they're open to taking that on. I can take their word that you would take on the museum. Y'all had said that you would do that? In other words, you got this year's, you got your budget that you requested in here.
They were planning on, from the conversation we had and I understood, taking that 90,000 out of the over, which is that 268 line item is where they plan on getting that 90,000. So we're both wanting to remove that over line item, which takes that 90,000 off the table.
Right. Right, okay, so we take that off the table. So if we go, you're at 3.3, he's at 3.4, and that's what this is the 3.4 is what they requested. No.
3.4 would be
taking out the overage, what they requested.
3.6.
No, I'm talking about just taking out the overage part.
That's the
for what they're gonna spend, okay. So can we just, because if we do 3.3, we're gonna have a 3-3 vote again, okay? Can we just come and say, okay, let's look at another $100,000, I understand where you are, but we're still cutting out that extra, and we're gonna make the millage reflect that in the fall. And that's a commitment from us.
Wait a minute, we're gonna make the millage reflect it when we know the mill rate, so there won't be an extraneous increase if the mill rate increases.
Right.
I mean, the value of the mill increases. So that freezes an unknown amount of growth that we all feel that will happen. Is that your opinion that there should be an increase in the mill rate so their revenue is going to grow even if we keep their millage value will grow, so the mill rate staying flat means they'll get even more revenue than we budget?
Their revenue grows almost every day, because what happens is, unlike personnel, which has $400,000, end of story, they get a millage of 5.8. Every time a new house is added, every time a new car is added, they get additional revenue. So that's a whole nother argument. I mean, so there's so many benefits that are going to this. They're driving a Cadillac financial system, where he's driving an Oldsmobile. His thing's driving an Oldsmobile. That's what I'm trying to get at, is that this, I mean, the way I calculate it, they're gonna probably get, if we do 5.9 mils, they're gonna get about $4 million next year. I mean, they're going to be, now I'm just trying to say this is enough.
So point of clarification here, what he just said was we have 100,000 difference between what we're talking about, but when we set the rates, we freeze it we match it up so that it won't grow if the mill rate, the value of the mill grows.
So the budget gets local commitment of $3.4 million. Whatever the value of a mill is, you divide it into that, and that's the millage rate that drops out. Right?
That's the way that I understand government finance.
That's fine. I mean, that's reasonable.
But I understand that's not the way this has been done. That's why they have what they have, because they have a set millage rate. And what we're going to do is adjust that millage rate come fall. just so everyone understands what we're talking
What do we
about.
do for our operating? Do we set the millage
Yeah.
rate and then decide the budget, or we decide the budget and then set the millage?
What I would call backwards math. We take the budget, we take the value of the real property in the place, and we divide one into the other and get the millage.
So that's exactly what we're talking about doing here.
That's right.
Correct? Whether it's happened in the past or not, I'll honestly say, I thought that's the way we did it.
No, they got a set millage.
They didn't have a set millage, they had a millage that previous boards didn't adjust. Is that a better way to say it? So we will, because we have the government's role, we will take our privilege to adjust it to meet exactly these numbers when we know the mill rate's set.
So can I make a new motion?
You're gonna substitute, or you're gonna amend?
Well, did you have it on the floor?
I don't.
Let's substitute and go to 3.4, okay, which is what they've got in there, and that's what we'll fund out of our funding, which should make, which you come up with your number.
The local.
The local funding is 3.4, that's another 100 grand, okay? And then that's all we're gonna do tonight is fund that right there.
Yes, I'll second.
Second by Councilman Saleh. Any discussion on that substitute motion to fund it at 3.4 locally?
Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chairman Costa.
Okay, just so that we're clear and that we understand, the request on their local line was 3.664. We're reducing it to 3.4,
Right.
which is equal to that, about equal to that $268,165 overage that's listed in the budget for it.
Right.
It's still a reduction from their request and keeps them flat to their revenue budget plan from last year.
So what the motion does is it does take out the 268 overage that was budgeted. That is what it does. It meets their expenditure request, but it does take out their overage.
Well, it doesn't meet their request. The request was 3.6.
No, what they're spending is what they're looking at.
But their spending on that same line was 3.6.
Correct. So if you'll take the 3.4, the 238, 448 from intergovernmental, which is the state, and the 35 for charges and for service, that gets you to their expenditure request.
Less the 260.
Yeah, what we're literally taking out the
overage,
but,
which no other department gets an overage built in.
Well, actually, there's plenty of departments. We just voted $1 million increase.
I know, but it's not part of their budgetary process. We have stuff that comes up like overtime and.
Absolutely.
Right.
We have things that we spend more
Right.
on in some departments and less on in other departments.
Right.
You're exact, but the point is, it is a reduction of $268,000.
But they don't lose the opportunity to work with Ken
No,
if there's some sort of
because
extraneous
they-
situation.
and where this is going to come in play is in the fall when they bring us their strategic plan and capital improvement plan and those kinds of things that they fund themselves. That's where this 268 number will come in handy, is when we understand what the usage of that is. I feel anyway.
So basically, your motion is local commitment of 3.4 million. Okay, I second that, I'm fine with it. Just let me give you the number. 3.4 million, they're gonna pick up about 300,000 from state fees, 3.7 million. For actual spending last year, 3.3 million. There'll be about 400,000 or over 10%. That's how much is spent, they're gonna be up over the last year.
Vice Chairman Costa.
Okay, you're still arguing numbers that off of 2020.
Those are
because you
budgeted
don't
numbers.
because you don't have 2021 numbers, because we don't have those. If you admitted 2 minutes ago that it could be more, it could be less, I can't use the 3.7 number, so you're using percentages of increases based on 3.3, which was at the end of 2020, and we don't know what the end of 2021 is. If their expenditures were 3.7, it's a
Okay.
reduction.
Okay, if their expenditures are less, will you reduce
Then
it?
then it would be an increase, you're right.
Okay.
But that's why I wanted to know that number.
Okay, we don't know.
But if you want to hold off until we get that number, but we do that with
No, I
every
think the
department.
3.4
We
is
do with
fine.
every department. We have to figure out based on last year. We don't know what the spending is to this point. We do that with every department. We have to make assumptions.
Yeah, but they took a $400,000 jump for whatever reason in 2021's budget, which does play a big part to Vice Chairman Costner's role. I know that they've added programs, they've added services, they're fully staffed. I think they may have a vacancy for the last maybe 2 days, 2 weeks. So it's a difference between like some departments that are running 9, 10 vacancies, they're not doing that. So they're actually maybe getting close, but we don't know.
Okay.
Any other discussion? So the motion on the table is to fund locally at 3.4. No other discussion. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? 5-1. Thank you. And just for clarification, that gets them whole at the 3.681621.
Yes.
All right. Next on the list, I almost jumped whole agenda items.
But you've got another couple.
We got 2 more motions coming up here.
Yep. So, do I have a motion for item
4.
4?
Yes, a motion to take $130,878 from the sheriff's budget to fund 2 litter control officers.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Any discussion? We discussed this in great detail the other night.
Yep.
All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? And that carries. Motion to give county employees 2% COLA increase and use the other $250 to go towards departments whose job positions may need pay increases. Do I have a motion?
Yes.
Councilman Whitehurst, do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Councilman Wilson, any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chairman Costner.
I'd like to make a motion to amend that to just fund the full 3% COLA increase, but ask the staff to come back with the targeted approach that Councilman Seda had given direction. I don't think we can just arbitrarily pick a number of what that would be, but if we're talking about that pot of money and you have the ability before you award any COLA increase or merit increase or whatever direction you're going to go, at least gives you the ability to have the plan and then present to us before you implement it.
So I have a motion to amend it to be 3% COLA increase and for Mr. Roper to bring back a plan for this.
Including the targeted approach that Councilman Seda had talked about, where that he may be able to make adjustments.
Do I have a second for that motion?
I second it.
Second by Councilman Finch for discussion.
Okay, some clarification. So you want to give everybody the 3% raise and then find additional money for targeted increases?
No, not at all. I'm saying that he had originally said, because you did the math in the budget meeting, here's how much money we're talking about. Let's take out, what is 1%? You said, they said $250,000. Let's decide, you target that. He may come back and say, I wanted to target with $300,000 and the rest goes toward. However, I don't think it should become incumbent upon us to decide which way it goes. I would rather see a comprehensive plan, or at least how are you going to implement it?
My feeling is the state pay increase is 2%. That's a good standard that we used to always use in the school system. I think it's a good one because it's inclusive also. The extra 1% I should be targeted to departments where pay is actually low. If we're having trouble getting EMS drivers, for example, you have 100 EMS drivers, you take $250,000 of that extra money, you divide it by 100, that's $2,500 for each person on top of the 2% they're going to get like everybody else. That's a nice increase. It might attract some EMS drivers. If it was a smaller case, well, let's say a department of 40, and you gave them $255,000, that's about $8,000 on top of the 2% they're getting. So we can actually catch up in areas where we're really weak and losing people. That's the general philosophy. I think it's a good one. I like the idea of 2% and saying, $255,000 is what you got, and mold your plan accordingly.
So
that's plenty of money.
Councilman say that, just for clarification, I believe the state actually got 3% COLA. My brother-in-law works for the state, and we were talking about it Sunday. So we're competing with the state, giving their 3% to their guys that work roads and bridges, drive trucks, things like that. That's what we're competing against.
I don't believe it was 3%.
I'm pretty sure it's what my brother-in-law got.
Just Google.
I'll Google, that's what I'm doing. I thought at one time I heard 2 between the
That's what I
House
heard
and
too.
Senate. I thought they came back at 3, but I was trying to verify.
Okay, it could be.
Yeah, I'm not joking. We talked about it Sunday. That's the only reason why I was approached.
It's a point of clarification. I'm agreeing with you on the target.
So we're going to spend 3 total.
I'm just saying, the pot remains the same, just as you said.
Okay.
for whatever amount.
We haven't
I don't
discussed
want
all
the
those yet.
Ownership on
Like
us
this,
to
we won't do that
decide
so much,
if
that'll
it's
come in the
250
fall,
or 200,
okay?
maybe it's 150.
So
These
the
are other
total's
things, but we may or may not
Total
discuss them
3%
tonight.
is in
These two
that
right here.
budget.
Okay, that's
Right,
fine.
but that wasn't something, well,
All right,
these are
so
just
I
points
thought
that
you
we
were
talked
saying
about.
3% in there.
That's how, well,
That's fine.
So gentlemen, I know there was some sidebar, so I want to, for clarification, the pot is still 3%.
Right.
We're not talking about a
2%.
3% and then on top of doing targeted. We're talking about there's 3% of the funding and then to determine the targeted.
So, well, wait a minute, so, no, I misunderstand that. My understanding, you're saying it's a 3% cost increase and then
I'm
targeted.
just saying, I'm saying if you, whatever the math is on the money that equates to 3%. Right now, the math that Councilman Sada did was, let's do 2% across the board and target 1%. I'm saying, you know what? Maybe it's 0.8% that he needs to target. Maybe it's 1.2% he needs to target. I don't know, but let him decide what that number is and how to target.
So what's the pay increase?
3% total.
Across the board?
No.
No,
What is it
no,
across the board?
There's no across the board.
you're
there's
talking
no
a total
across the
pot
board.
of 3%. A total pot.
So you're basically saying, you're just saying right now, we just want to plan for how you're gonna spend the 3% we're giving.
I'm saying give him 3% and you come back with a plan on how you're gonna do it.
I got it better.
Okay.
Why don't we stick with the original motion of 2% and then the 255,000 for second reading? He comes back at third reading and it's substantially different. We'll have the stuff in front of us. We can change it then.
If that's a motion, then I second it and third it.
That just makes it real easy.
But it does task him to come up with a plan.
Yeah, he's got to do something with the 255, or if he thinks it's different, it's
So
more or less.
Gentlemen, please, because I'm way in the weeds at the moment. The motion on the table that I had a second on was for the 3% and to come back with a plan for how to target. Now I got a motion to amend that to go back to the original motion and come back with a plan. So
That was the plan all along, for them to come back with a plan.
correct, but the motion on the table we were discussing was, so was that a motion to go back to the original plan?
Yes, mine was a substitute motion to have a cost of living increase of 2% for everyone. The extra 1%, which is 255,000, will be targeted to a subset of employees who the administration feels need a bigger pay raise than the COLA.
But they're gonna bring us that plan.
Yeah, they'll bring us that plan.
I think the 2% keeps us on track for growing.
And it may be 1.5%, and as a result, it'll all equal 3% in the end.
So if it may be
Then
one
perhaps
and
we
a
should
half,
just wait until third reading to
Change it.
do anything
with it.
So Roy has to withdraw his, we had to vote on his, and then we move on.
So the
Is that
motion-
right?
Now, mine was a substitute motion. They're gonna wipe his out.
I want to make a motion that we just withdraw the motion to touch it and have the administrator bring it back to third reading, and it sits like it sits.
Okay, we all thought this was a great idea in committee, by the way.
Yeah, we really did.
Yeah.
It's just
Okay.
I'm getting confused.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
To be on the record here, I think a 2% COLA for everybody knows what they're getting. And then giving Ken the opportunity to have some targeted funding. He's got somebody making $10 an hour. He can go in there and adjust their pay. He's got folks that are underfunded with regards to what the market is charging for those folks. We can't hire good people. We can't even hire people. I think that's a cogent and decent plan. Gives him some flexibility, gives everybody the idea how much raise they're going to get, even if he doesn't adjust their pay. That seems fairly reasonable to us.
So the motion on the table is as written. I got a second. We've had discussion. The only addition is Mr. Roper is going to bring us back a plan for the actual implementation by third reading. All those in favor of that, please signify by raising your hand. All right, I think it's unanimous. Thank you.
That's done.
So I want to make a motion that we reduce the funding for Tri-County Tech to the requested amount. This is from Tri-County of the $1,575,100.
Second.
Second by Vice Chairman. Any discussion there?
So Tri-County is requesting a smaller amount.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's the way I understand it.
That's why I
correct.
understood it too.
Anytime another government entity says, please give us less, I want to do it.
No, because likely the percentage of students that are coming from Pickens is lower, so our allocation is less. That's
I
like.
think they actually did some refinancing and got
Oh,
low.
did they?
figures, so. Yeah. All right. All those in favor of that, please signify by raising your hand. All right, that motion carries. Are there any other motions on here that I may be missing?
So the rescue squad budget is separate from emergency management. Is there any reason why we don't do that now?
Other than we haven't dove into the weeds of what it would look like.
Okay. that we're gonna be able to do the weeds before the end? Does this have to be included in the budget for this year? Because we're probably looking at a one-year transition if they do make some changes there like we talked about.
Actually, I think you can make the motion to separate that out, right?
Yeah, if you want to make that motion, absolutely.
All right, so I move that we separate that budget line item just for accountability and transparency
So I have a
purposes.
motion and a second to separate that for accountability. Any discussion there? All right, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. The $1,000 for the economic development Wi-Fi was a discussion we had, but we never actually took action on it. So I want to make the motion that we do the $1,000 for the economic development Wi-Fi.
Second.
Second by Councilman Wilson. Discussion there. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. And then we had one for the takeout fire equipment for Dacusville, 6 Mile and Vineyards, which will be purchased in 2021. We're just moving it ahead. Do I have a motion to do that?
Yes.
I have a motion by Councilman Whitehurst. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Wilson. And this is not saying we're not purchasing, it's just saying we're purchasing it after June 30th. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That carries. Gentlemen, is there anything else I may have missed? Okay, hearing none, go ahead.
No, we're waiting on the,
Yep. So, hearing none, I'm back to, and I did have a motion and second for ordinance number 599 prior to going into all these amendments. So, I ask for any other discussion on ordinance number 599. This will constitute the second reading of ordinance 599. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That carries unanimous. Thank you. That wasn't too painful. All right, item 13 on the agenda, second reading of ordinance number 601, authorizing the execution and acceptance of lease for Long Shoals Roadside Park. Ask for a motion and a second to constitute the second reading of ordinance number 601. I have a motion by Vice Chairman Costner. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Wilson. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 14, public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 600 to develop a jointly owned and operated industrial business park in conjunction with Oconee County. Such industrial business park to be geographically located in Oconee County and established pursuant to section 4170 of the Code of Laws of South Carolina as amended to provide for a written agreement with Oconee County to provide the expense of the park, the percentage of the revenue application, and the distribution of fees in lieu of ad valorem taxation and other matters related thereto. I now call us into public hearing for the purpose of ordinance number 600. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Hearing none, I close public comment. I ask for a motion and a second to constitute second reading of ordinance 600. Motion by Vice Chairman Costner. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Finster. Any discussion?
One thing, we never know what company these things are. Is there some way we can figure out what we're signing up to be joint with?
So, Mr. Roper, under an economic development update, is there a way that we can find out a little about these companies? I know in the past we really haven't, but is there a way we can do that?
Absolutely. I'll gather whatever information they're willing to publicly share, knowing that some of them will be more sensitive than others.
but this park is located in Oconee.
That's correct.
That's what
Yeah, we'll get 1% of the revenue there. Hearing no other discussion, I call for vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. Item 15 is the consent agenda. I do have the American Rescue Act funding down on the consent agenda to go to the committee. Is there anything on this? That was it. All right, all those in favor of adopting the consent agenda, please signify by raising your hand. Do I have a motion that we adopt this for the consent agenda? Motion by Vice Chairman Gossett.
Second.
Second by Councilman Finster. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 16 is executive session. I have on here personnel, section 3470, clerk to council annual review, and then I have contractual, section 470, legal update, and then we added legal consultation as well. Do I have a motion and a second that we go into executive session for these
Motion.
matters? Motion by Councilman Feenstra. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Wires. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. We'll go to executive session after a very brief recess. Thank you, gentlemen.
Uh-oh.
How do you turn it off? Hey, Megan, what's the reason?
Tough job. Who is this guy here?
He's done good.
How you doing?
That's the Scott. That's